Okay, now after one false start, we can start now. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the meeting of the Bonita Springs Zoning Board. The first order of business would be to welcome our two new members, Ms. Linda Waterhouse and Mr. Jerry Benson. They will be joining us. Can we please have Mr. Wynn deliver the invocation?
Be honored to. Let us pray, please. Father, we thank you for a beautiful day that you've given us here in Southwest Florida. We ask, God, your blessings on our gathering today. You see our agenda that's before us. We ask that you grant us the wisdom and the guidance, Lord, as we listen to these cases. And once again, we thank you for America. Ask your blessings upon her, our government, and our first responders. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Wynn. Next, I would like to do the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Members will stand, face the flag, and recite. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. May I ask the city clerk please to call the roll?
Chairman Rossio.
Here.
Bruce Galloway.
Here.
Russ Wynn.
Present.
Linda Waterhouse.
Present.
Gary Gamble.
Here.
Ben Hershenson.
Here.
Gerald Benson.
Here.
Next order of business is the approval of the minutes of the meeting held on May 18, 2001. I will entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Minutes are approved. Thank you very much. Okay. The next order of business on the agenda was the selection of a vice chairman. Now, in my opinion, the fact that we have two new members, I would like to table that item until the next meeting in order to give the two new members an opportunity to observe the other members in their duties as a member of the board. So we will table that. The next is public comments. As is our wont, we will have public comments after both sides have made their presentations. The next item is the public hearing. The first case is the Grace Classical Academy Special Exception. It's a special exception request for a two-phase expansion of enrollment of an existing school's non-commercial other use Grace Classical Academy within the agricultural AG2 zoning district. I will entertain now advocates for that application.
Mr. Chairman, if you wouldn't mind, just because we do have two members, and we have a number of members of the public here. I just want to go over a little bit of the procedures for the public.
Please.
This is a quasi-judicial hearing, which means that this is a case of first impression for board members here. They have not, other than seeing the staff reports, they have not been involved and had any communications with the applicants. If any of the members have had any communications with either staff or the applicants, I would ask that they disclose that at this time. But otherwise, only competent, which is sworn factual evidence or expert opinion may be properly considered by the board. So the order of procedure today will go as follows. Staff will give a brief introduction of each application. Then the applicant will come forward and they will present their case. Their case will be based on the criteria laid out in the city's land development code. They must address the criteria. If they meet the burden of addressing those criteria, they will be entitled to an approval. The city staff will then give a presentation themselves, which will be considered additional evidence in the hearing. If the city staff contravene the recommendation of the applicant, then they would have to prove that there's evidence on the record on those same findings to support a decision of denial. For the members of the public here, I would ask that you consider what the criteria for approval are and limit your comment to those. Hyperbolic statements, and statements of, I don't like this, I don't want it in my backyard, those kind of comments, generally cannot be considered by the board. However, comments regarding compatibility with adjoining properties, traffic considerations, your personal knowledge of the situation on the ground are all relevant factual evidence for consideration. So I just thought I'd give that brief evidence, as we have a pretty packed group in here today. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to interject here as well. My name is Gary Gambrell. City Clerk Debbie, is that Debbie? I'm sorry, but we were given less than a week to review these packets, and these are serious considerations, and it's evident by the public that's here today to speak on it and talk about it. I haven't had enough time to review this properly. It just so happens I was traveling this weekend for the first time in 15 months, which is neither here nor there. But the time that the city staff has put into this, the developers have put into this, the direct impact it has on residents, the direct impact it has on the businesses that are being considered here today, 1 week, less than a week, is just not enough time to fully comprehend what's the packets that are in front of us. I'll make a motion now to table both of these until our next meeting.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gambrell. But as you know, this is typical current procedure. We all have a week or a week and a half to review these things. I think all of the other members have had enough time. It's unfortunate that you happen to be away, but it is what it is. I think to table something like this, it's too important that we delay it another month or what have you, or a special ad hoc meeting. So, I mean, I would personally oppose that motion.
I understand.
Okay? Okay. Let us proceed.
Well, it dies for lack of a second. The motion dies for lack of a second. At this time, before staff speaks, what I will ask is I'm going to swear in anyone who wishes to speak today. If you're a member of the public, even if you don't think you're likely to speak, just on the possible incentive that you might, I'm going to ask you to please stand and be sworn right now. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Okay, thank you very much. Go ahead.
Good morning, Board. Our first presentation today and our first request is for the special exception SPE 276117, and that's for the Grace Classical Academy special exception, a request to go from 48 students that are currently permitted to increase their enrollment to 160 students over 2 phases. Mr. Arnold will make his presentation. It should be coming up.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the Zoning Board. I'm Wayne Arnold. I'm a local certified planner with Q. Grady Minor and Associates. I've appeared before this body for 20-plus years now, and happy to be here representing the Grace Classical Academy. They are tenants on the New Life Church campus just off of Via Del Rey and Vanderbilt Drive, and have a short presentation. We'll go through and talk about the criteria. And we have several neighbors here who've participated in our 2 neighborhood meetings that we've held as part of the process here. And I'll try to address some of their issues. With me today is Amy Morello, who's the head of school for the Grace Classical Academy. And they've been occupants on the church campus for about 6 years in their capacity. And they're looking to grow their faith-based school. And there's a demand for that in our community. And thankfully, they're hoping to get this approval so they can expand and serve more people in our community. How do I advance that? Tell me? Okay, you can go ahead and advance that, please, Scott. You can go ahead. We have Jim Banks, who's our traffic engineer. He had a family emergency and is out in Oregon right now. I understand he may be on Zoom if we have a technical traffic question. He can be available. If not, I'll try to handle any questions that we may have. Next, please. So as Mary indicated, this property is zoned agriculture, and it's in their future land use designation as medium-density multifamily. Things like private schools are allowed by special exception under the AG2 agricultural zoning district, so we're applying for a special exception to expand the facility. Next, please. This is an aerial photograph showing you the existing church campus. To your left of the screen is Vanderbilt Drive. The driveway connection to the north is Via Del Rey. The most prominent building on the site is the church sanctuary building, and then to the east is the Family Life Center building, which is where the Grace Classical Academy K-8 school is currently located and wishes to expand. I would point out that our firm is an immediate neighbor with the church, and we have enjoyed a shared parking arrangement with them for many, many years. Next, please. So again, you've heard the request. We want to do a two-phased expansion. They would like to expand from their current 48 student approval to 90 students that they can accommodate in the existing building. Any future expansion beyond 90 students would require them to either add fixed structures on site or to do portable modular type classroom buildings, which we've depicted on our conceptual plan. Can you go ahead and advance that? Can you go to the site plan? It should be a couple slides farther in there, Kyle. There you go. So the preliminary conceptual plan that we've developed, you can see the depiction of the existing church sanctuary, and the church has a preschool that operates there as well. The K-8 school would be located in their Family Life building, which would continue to host other functions that are related to the church, but that's where the classroom space physically would be. And then to the east, closer to Mango Drive, you see the future portable modular classroom area where they would potentially be located if the school decides to expand beyond 90 students. All the parking that exists on site is adequate to cover the proposed expansion. Fortunately, the church parking and the school don't conflict in terms of their use, so the shared parking works out just fine. Can you advance that another slide, please? So access to the site primarily is through Vanderbilt Drive and Via Del Rey to the west. Mango Drive is a public road that's located to the east, and I think most of the residents who are here to speak are Mango Drive residents. And through our two neighborhood meetings, we learned that they're very concerned about increases in traffic on Mango Drive. And the school has more recently instituted a procedure during pickup and drop-off hours that they put cones across the parking aisle to prohibit people from either entering from Mango Drive or exiting back to Mango Drive. They've also instructed all of their parents to use Via Del Rey and Vanderbilt Drive for their departure from the campus. Can you advance that? So one of the things we worked with staff on is stacking for pickup and drop-off. And this exhibit we prepared that depicts the stacking for 90 students. The code doesn't really have a standard for stacking for schools, but Collier County does use one, and I think Mr. Ross is familiar with that from your staff. And we've applied that same formula to this project, and by arranging the traffic flow in this manner, we can accommodate stacking on site without impacting any public roadway. Next. So the phase 2 stacking, there was concern that we would need to pave a drive aisle that's part of the grass parking area that the church uses today. And we understand that we would need to put asphalt down to make a proper drive aisle that would be used for stacking for the next phase of the project if they move beyond 90 students. Can you advance that? So this is an exhibit that depicts the traffic cone locations where they're placing those. They happen to be right outside my window, so I view them every day putting the cones outside at the school, and it seems to have worked well. I know that there are other activities that occur at the church. The church tries very hard to instruct people coming to the church not to utilize Mango Drive, but it is a public street, and so the cones seem to be working very well. I monitor that every day, and they're not in session, obviously, right now. They're off for their summer recess, but that seems to have been a very inexpensive opportunity to take care of the traffic issue related to any expansion for the K-8 school. So if you go back a few slides right before the site plan, that would be great. So as Mary indicated, and as Mr. Rooney did, there are criteria that are outlined in your staff report for obtaining a special exception. In this case, the question is whether there are changed conditions that are mandating this. Well, there is a greater demand for their school. They're getting more and more requests for student enrollment. They have both virtual school and in-attendance school, but they are getting demand for more students. Is this request consistent with your comprehensive plan? Yes, it is, as your staff report also concludes. It is consistent because churches, daycare centers, private and public schools are permitted uses in that zoning district. Are there performance standards that we meet or exceed? There really are no performance standards for a K through 8 school. Staff's analysis goes through some of the other things related to stacking and things that we've been working on and concluded that we are consistent with that criteria. Another one of the criteria is whether the request will protect, conserve, preserve environmentally critical areas. There are none on the site. The site's been previously cleared and filled. It has a water management district permit that governs the entirety of the site. Some of you may remember a project called Coastal Cottages that came through the process as a planned development just south of the church. And that's part of the same overall original church ownership that they sold to a third party. But that separates us from our nearest residential community to the south. Are we compatible with existing or planned uses? So the enrollment up to 90 students can be accommodated in the existing building that they're currently operating in by putting in additional classroom space. We have all the parking we need on site. We're restricting the access to Mango because we've heard from the neighbors that that was disruptive to them. So in an effort to be more compatible, have the cone plan, as I call it, to put those out. And then if we expand beyond the four corners of the classroom building today, there would be buffers installed along Mango Drive consistent with your landscape buffering requirements. And then, of course, with staff's conditions of approval, we feel that we are compatible and we urge you to approve us. So the other is, another criteria, will we cause damage, hazard, nuisance, or other detriment to persons? The enrollment increase will not cause that nuisance to them. The church campus has been utilized for K through 8 school for half a dozen years now. There's been a daycare operating on the property for many, many years. The church obviously has been there for 30 years now and seems to have been a very compatible and good neighbor. I know that there are concerns about increasing traffic. I just spoke with the pastor this morning about things that they do to encourage people not to utilize Mango Drive and to try to utilize Vanderbilt Drive and via Del Rey to come to the church. So I think we're doing all that we can do to negate that negative issue that's being felt by some of the neighbors. And then are we consistent with the requirements? Yes, your land development code has certain criteria that we have to meet. We have asked for no deviations from your code requirements. So with that, we're seeking your recommendation of approval for the project with staff conditions. One of the staff conditions, and I'll let Mary get into it, but one of the staff conditions talked about maintaining 159 parking spaces on site. I think the number's actually 141, but I think Mary wants to modify that standard to simply say that we have to maintain the minimum number of parking as required by code on site at all times. And we're certainly amenable to doing that. So that's my short presentation, and if you have questions, I'm happy to answer those.
May I ask one question?
Yes, of course.
How have you chosen the location for the cones? It seems to be a little away from Mango Drive, and if someone comes in and makes the turn without seeing those, they're gonna have to make a U-turn and go back out again. Would it not make more sense to put the cones a little closer to Mango Drive?
We could do that. It may make an effort to put up 2 series of cones to do that. They were placed where they are so parents and people dropping off their kids can look to the right and see that there's a barrier. Because if you push them down farther, another 100 feet, people may not see them and make the right turn toward Mango to realize that they then have to make their own.
Okay, makes sense. But maybe you can think about putting the cones a little closer to Mango Drive to prevent people from making a left-hand or a right-hand turn into that and then having to go back out again.
Yes, and that may be something that's just another set of cones to be installed at the same time. A second set of them. That's a good suggestion.
Any other question? Shall we hear from staff?
Thank you.
No, thank you, sir. Very cogent presentation. Thank you.
Good morning, Mary Zizzo for the record again. The Grace Academy one. Thank you. So much of what Mr. Arnold referenced is what I'll be referencing as well. We are in agreement with many items, and the applicant has worked very diligently with us to correct any discrepancies we believed we had. So like I mentioned prior, that this request is for 160 students maximum over a two-phase expansion of the Grace Classical Academy, currently located at 3971 Via Del Rey, occupying the Family Life Center at the New Life Church campus. Staff does recommend approval, subject to the conditions listed in your staff report, and will be listed at the end of this presentation as well, with that one change mentioned by Mr. Arnold that I will discuss later. So the location, as Mr. Arnold presented, next slide. So you're south of Bonita Beach Road, you're east of Vanderbilt Drive, which is a Collier County collector road, and Collier County is just west of the property, and then on your east is Mango Drive. And as previously mentioned, the sanctuary building is in the front, which also hosts a preschool during the week. And then the rear building, the Family Life Center building, is leased by Grace Classical Academy currently. In 2014, Grace Classical Academy was granted their special exception to allow 48 students maximum. When this request came in, the applicants requested a temporary extension of that for 64 students, which they were permitted to do and will expire within 2 months if this does not get approved or denied. And we also use it as a time for observation. So we went out there many times, you might have seen us there, and we observed the pickup and drop-off operation to make sure that it was operating the way they proposed. As discussed, the future land use does allow this use. It's appropriate for schools and semi-public uses, and commercial uses are appropriate so long as they are sensitive to the nearby residential uses. The zoning is AG2, which does require the special exception, hence the 2014 one, and then this extension request. And as mentioned previously, it's currently used as a place of worship during the weekend, and then a daycare and the private school use during the week. So as previously mentioned, and I'll make this brief, to the south is the Coastal Cottages plan development that was approved. They are not currently developing, but they have submitted a request and they're in the process of their development order. To the west is commercial and a retirement facility of Collier County. Below Coastal Cottages to the south is the Bermuda Isles condominium. To the north is the Vanderbilt Office Park commercial plan development, and then to the east are single-family residences zoned both RS1 and RS3. We find that the proposed use is complementary to the place of worship use, and that all uses have operated concurrently since 2014, and we have no reason to believe that they won't continue to operate successfully because of that. The proposed expansion is sensitive to the residential uses. We have received a lot of feedback regarding the use of Mango Drive. We have attempted to address that for the school use. I know there has been talk of the church closing that access to Mango Drive, and at this time that was not analyzed for this request. So the special exception findings were already mentioned, and they're included in your staff report, but I will mention a bit of analysis that was also included in the staff report. We do find that there is an increase in faith-based and private school education. Regarding the testimony of the public, there were many concerns regarding the use of Mango Drive, and we hope to address that within this and these conditions attached. The intensity we find to be appropriate for this area. It's still sensitive to the nearby uses, but the operation of the site was intended to solely use Vanderbilt Drive for the ingress and egress with this proposal. And then the locational standards, yes, they will be required to meet all LDC standards, the Land Development Code of Bonita Springs. At the time of any expansion to a new structure, architecturally, they must meet the code, they must meet buffering, they must meet setbacks. We did hear concerns of noise pollution, which I have included to you today, and the noise ordinance will remain in effect at all times. Further, what we find beneficial about the site is that all queuing is permitted to be on-site. We don't want any backups onto Vanderbilt Drive via Del Rey. They can accommodate all traffic within their site, as shown on their stacking plans. So as previously mentioned, this is the circulation plan proposed. And so they enter off of Vanderbilt Drive to via Del Rey, and then they enter through the site, go under the porte cochere of the church and sanctuary preschool building, circle around, and then pick up their children at the Family Life Center, the rear building. And then they'll continue back out to via Del Rey. And then, as mentioned, the cones were requested by staff, and they were placed there, and through many observations, nobody has been using Mango Drive when we observed the pickups and drop-offs. You can go to this one. Further, with this proposal, a sign will be placed at the, right before you would turn right to exit out to Mango Drive to remind parents that they cannot exit that way. So the stacking plan for Phase 1 allows for 21 cars, and again, that would be accommodated entirely on site. And this would be for the 90 students proposed maximum. And then the stacking plan for Phase 2, the calculation showed that they needed 37 cars to be accommodated, and as mentioned, that would then require them to pave the drive aisles, and it will require further engineering if Coastal Cottages does develop. So staff does recommend approval, subject to these conditions below. The Phase 1 will be 90 students maximum, and they shall operate in the Phase 1 stacking plan. Phase 2 is 91 to 160 students maximum. Again, they shall follow the Phase 2 stacking plan, which includes site improvements. And this can be reassessed at the time of local development order to see if they can accommodate a greater number without having to make all of those improvements. Of course, they'll have to provide those studies to us. Number 2, as the applicant mentioned, we are amenable and have changed it here in the recommendations that the parking shall comply with the land development code. Should the church decrease in seats or increase in seats, they will need to maintain the required minimum or seek approvals otherwise. All on-site vehicular circulation shall only utilize paved drive aisles and shall enter and exit the site via Del Rey and Vanderbilt Drive. At no time shall vehicle queues extend onto the roadways, including via Del Rey and Vanderbilt Drive, or block any access driveway to the site. At the time of school enrollment of 91 students, the Phase 2 stacking plan attached to the special exception resolution will be implemented. The school may administratively request an alternate stacking plan or threshold above 90 students to determine if the Phase 1 stacking plan can accommodate more than 90 students. If so, establish a new student enrollment limit prior to implementing the Phase 2 stacking plan. And as contemplated within the traffic impact statement, all ingress and egress for the school function shall utilize Vanderbilt Drive. An on-site directional sign shall be installed to facilitate the student pickup and drop-off in accordance with the approved student drop-off and pickup exhibit. During afternoon student dismissal periods, school personnel shall place traffic cones and/or flaggers, and we can include it to say the 2 pairs of cones, across the east-west drive aisle to Mango Drive to provide direction in accordance with the approved student drop-off and pickup exhibit. The school shall provide proof of enrollment on an annual basis by the anniversary of the date of approval to the City of Bonita Springs Community Development Department to ensure compliance. This report shall include the number of students enrolled. Failure to submit this report shall result in a revocation of occupancy to ensure that they are in compliance at all times. Private school hours of operation are limited to Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. with occasional weekend events. Should the operation not function according to the stacking plan included in the staff report, or the additional safety concerns arise from this implementation of the plan, after 3 documented observations, then the special exception shall return to City Council for reconsideration. And then Collier County will review at time of limited development order or development order for their portion of the traffic. Any questions?
I have some questions, Mary.
Yes.
I'd like to go over your recommendations point by point, if I might.
Okay.
Point 4, you feel that the number of vehicles will be enough to assure that no queue will extend onto the roadways. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you prevent that simply by the number of vehicles? No other way to prevent that you contemplated?
If it is not functioning that way, which they have showed us with calculations that it will, and we have had our traffic engineer review it thoroughly, if it is not functioning that way, then they will possibly have to make those site improvements earlier on so that they can utilize more of their site to accommodate all of those vehicles.
Your point 6 refers to Phase 2 only, if I'm correct.
It refers to both, essentially saying they will
Well,
not use
then-
Mango Drive.
Does it not, I'm sorry, does it not conflict a little bit with the use of Via Del Rey as the only way out?
By using Vanderbilt Drive, they have to turn onto Via Del Rey to enter the site. So either way, they'll be entering that. We put it in there specifically this way because in the event Phase 2 does need to use the new entrance, if it is constructed, we could potentially go back and change that.
I understand.
So
this is
either way,
just
Vanderbilt Drive will be used.
In
It's-
anticipation, right? That's what you're saying?
Exactly.
Okay. All right. You talk about a directional sign. Where will you install that?
So the sanctuary building, if you can go back to the site plan. Where the cars enter and, that's perfect. Where the cars enter and exit, we don't have a laser, do we? Where you would enter to go through the porte
Off
cochere?
of Via Del Rey? You come in
Yes.
and make a right-hand turn?
Correct.
Okay.
You'll make a right-hand turn and then a left into the site. Thank you.
And the sign will say, what, keep right?
It will say no right turn essentially. Oh, okay, right here. Right here is where the sign will go. And it will say no right turn permitted.
Oh, I understand, so that's in addition, that's extra protection, including the
Correct.
cones. All right, fine, okay, that makes sense, and that might obviate the need of cones, maybe, if people obey the sign.
That would be
But you
ideal.
never know. Okay. All right, okay. All right. Point 8. You're not anticipating staff to monitor the compliance with the rules, are you? Just the cones and the sign you think should be enough?
We do expect staff to ensure
Oh, you do?
compliance. Yes.
Okay, it just wasn't clear for me.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going
Sure.
to just intercede on your point.
No, go ahead.
Mary, where it says on point number 3 and number 4 on the comments, recommendations, and I quote, all on-site vehicular circulations shall, and then the next statement 4, at no time shall vehicle queues extend. How does that get enforced? Who is going to be the enforcement agency or responsibility? Perhaps Mr. Arnold can answer that question. That is probably, to me, yes, what it says on paper can work, but then that's only dependent upon the enforcement that it does work. So I have a question about that.
At this time, it would be more so based off of observances. We would have to go out there and see it, and then we would put that as a documented observation that it's not working the way it should.
Yeah, I think what you can do is you can just kind of encourage the parents picking up their children to move along.
Exactly, and like I said,
That's
we've been
what
out there
causes
many
those
times.
delays, is it not? I mean, people just sitting there and waiting for,
Or multiple children in
children,
a car, it
yeah,
takes a
or
little bit
multiple
longer.
people.
But like I said, we've been out there many times, and they've made it moving pretty quickly.
you're comfortable then?
I'll listen to more, and then I'll
Okay.
let you know.
Can I make a
I still
comment?
have some doubts, but.
I'd like to make a comment, too. I drop my grandson and pick him up at the charter school on Old 41. Very hectic, very busy. And what the school does there, and I'm sure you probably would do the same maybe, the people, the teachers and the people that are employed, they are out there acting like law enforcement and traffic
Exactly.
control. And they do it very, very flawlessly. So I know it can work. I've seen it happen on multiple occasions, with personal experience at the Bonita Charter School. So they have a hectic schedule in and out. So
I
I'm
go
just
by
bringing that
every day.
observation out,
I agree.
that there are facilities that are very busy, students, and they do make it work. But you'll have to have all staff on hands, to make that happen.
And they've taken our feedback and already showed us that they're willing to do so, so we do feel
Yeah.
confident with that.
My next point is a question on point 9. And has any thought been given to a more frequent provision of proof of enrollment rather than annually? Or this,
We can do that. Typically, annually is the easiest way to monitor that, but we
Well, I
can
mean-
always add more. We could do quarterly.
I would feel more comfortable that way, provided you would have a form and information designed by the Community Development Department, which will be filled out by the principal or whomever and submitted.
We can
I
create
feel
one
more
and give
comfortable if you could do
required
that.
dates of acceptance.
Okay. And my last point is on point number 11. Should the operation not function according to the stocking plan after 3 documented observations? Who will be the observers?
I myself will be one of them, but it will be staff members.
Staff members will observe. Okay, they
Correct.
will
City
be
staff
positioned there
city staff members.
to observe this. And they will also report as required. Okay.
Exactly. In the
That's-
event we get feedback from residents or even parents within the school, and they say, hey, you need to get out there, we'll definitely go out there and make sure it's documented.
Okay. That's all the questions I had.
Mary, I have-
Anybody else on the board?
Yep, I have one, Mary. I'm having trouble separating the impact of the two uses on the site. I know we're only talking about the school, but in reality, there are two uses on the site. Both of them have an impact on the surrounding community,
The church use, you
the
mean?
church use.
Okay.
Now, the building that we're talking about now, that will be used solely as a school, right?
During the week, on the weekend, they can still use it as part of their place of worship use, which is permitted by right at that location.
So it won't be used totally as a school, it'll be shared use?
Correct, so during the week, it will be for the school use, and on the weekend, it will be for the church to utilize.
Okay, any special events at the school?
We were not provided any, but I'm sure you have back-to-school night or something. Okay.
And
The principal's not here to address that, but. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, then come on up. You can do it. Sorry, I thought you said she wasn't here.
Hi, my name is Amy Mariello. I'm the head of school at Grace Classical Academy. We will have maybe 2 events at night during the year. We usually have a back-to-school night, and we usually have maybe like an end-of-year program. That's it. And even now, those events, we kind of stagger how many people are there at one time, just so we don't have the entire school and all of their parents, brothers and sisters, and everybody there at once. It gets overwhelming when that many people are there. So we try and stagger the times that they're there.
There are no athletic facilities in the school?
There is a gym there, but we don't use it. We don't right now. Next year, we may have a cross-country team, but that's it. We're too small to have sports right now.
Okay, so the neighborhood doesn't come in and use the communities, the building for anything other than a school and a couple of special events?
The church does. The church uses it, and they use it for other events.
Okay,
But-
well, this gets to the heart of my question. There are 2 uses. Is the church going to remain a church only, where they have services, 1 or 2 services or 3 or 4, however how many, on Sunday? Are there special events at the church? Because the impact is combined, and I have a real hard time separating the school from the church, because the
Sure.
traffic impact, is magnified by the church. You can't just look at the school.
Understand
I
that.
don't think.
So, yeah, I have the pastor of New Life Church is here, and he can address that. That's
Okay.
okay?
My name is James Julian. I'm the pastor at New Life Church. And to address your question, we do use our church on Sundays for worship. We have one service on Sunday morning. We have a Bible study at 9:30. But as a church, we are realizing for us to impact our community, and our mission is to impact our community for Christ. We know that we're just not going to be able to open the doors and have people come to church anymore. You know, it's a different culture, it's a different time. So we do allow and we do open up our church for missions and for evangelism in Upward Sports on the weekends. We do have some services that happen on occasionally. The Corvette Club meets on Thursday night, the first Thursday of every month at our church. Every time that we have an event, whether it's Upward Sports or the Corvette Club or whoever, on Sunday mornings, we stress, we encourage, and we want those that are using it, and we tell them, please enter our facilities via Vanderbilt. Mango Drive is there, it's available, and as much as we try and tell even our church members, I don't know if you ever try to tell a senior citizen that they can't do anything. I'm not going to stress to them and demand that they enter our church from Vanderbilt, because I would lose a church member that way. But we stress to them, we encourage them, we tell them, please, when you come to our facilities, when you come to our worship services, use Vanderbilt. And the times that I've been in the pickup and the drop-off for Grace, I don't know how they do it, but 100% of the parents use Vanderbilt. This expansion and this proposal has no impact on Mango at all, because 100% of the parents and the teachers, they are using Vanderbilt Drive. The Mango residents, they do have an issue if our church members use Mango. And again, we stress, we encourage them to use Vanderbilt. But again, people are set in their ways, and we'll do all that we can to encourage and to open up Vanderbilt for them to use. But we can only do what we can, again, because of a public road.
Am I correct in stating that church services and church activities will mainly take place when school is out? Sundays? Evenings?
Church, yeah. Oh, yeah, we don't have, maybe one or two during the year where the church activity and the school activity
One other
intercede.
question.
Intersect.
How large is your congregation? The
On
reason
Sunday
I bring it up is because I look at St. Leo's Church,
Yes.
and they have police.
Oh, we're nowhere
blocking the
near
drive.
that. yeah.
Is your congregation that big that you have to maybe have police or private
Oh, no,
security?
right now, we have about 75 to 80 that attend
Oh.
on Sunday morning.
Okay.
In season, we can grow up to 200, so.
Okay, so it's been working well,
Oh,
from what you can say.
we have no problem. In fact, if y'all don't have a church, come and visit New Life Church. We'd love to have you, or the Springs, Church of the Springs, sorry. Equal opportunity. Yeah,
you-
there's no problem, we don't have any problem with parking or traffic or anything, so.
Yeah, One last question.
Yes.
Have you noticed in your years in this facility, the use of your parking lot as a through street between Vanderbilt and Mango?
Has been used, I'm sorry, what?
Being used as a through street? In other words, somebody turning off Vanderbilt, cutting all
Oh,
over
oh, yeah.
Mango?
I've been, this August will be my third year. We have security cameras. We'll go through the security cameras once in a while if there's something that golf carts will cut through our parking lot from Mango. We have residents that don't want to go to the light that live to the west of Vanderbilt. They'll cut across and then go down Mango. So it's not 100% New Life Church. It's, there's everybody that doesn't want to stop at the light at Vanderbilt and Bonita. They'll go down Mango, so they'll
thank
just
you.
cross the street.
That's more of a public traffic concern.
Sure.
It's not a church concern or a
Right.
school concern.
It's not at all.
can't-
Yeah, they go, I can't remember the name of the street just north of our facility, but Katrina. They'll cut across Vanderbilt onto Katrina, continue to drive east to Mango, and then take a left, or, take a right from there, go south or north, so.
That answer your question? Okay.
Good.
All right. The next order before we vote is to hear from the public. And we will now entertain comments from the public, if any. Anything? Oh, please. You have been sworn in,
I have.
and if you would just give us your name, please, and
I'm Quinn Ruel. I'm the president of the Vanderbilt Office Park Owner Association. And,
Office Park.
yeah, the Via Del Rey Road, which is a private road, and I believe there's no access. They have some grandfathered historical landlocked access, to my knowledge. So my concerns are strictly about the amount of traffic that will be increased coming in and out of there, specifically in season. We have numerous businesses in there that need that road to come in and out. The church historical use has never been one of a problem because it's just on the weekends. The church has got a daycare center now. Grady Minor's parking in there now. They've been doing it for a long time as well. They have probably 20 spots they're using in there. The expanded use to 160 seems to be excessive for that facility, for that site. There's a coastal cottage community down the way that is coming in, it's partially approved. Frontage road going to their ingress egress would be more appropriate. I think that there's absolutely no way that they can stop in season when Vanderbilt is as busy as it is, and parents are queuing up 100+ cars trying to get in and out of that facility during hours where employees of our complex are trying to get to work, in the morning drop-offs. I don't see how that's not going to back onto Vanderbilt or obstruct Via Del Rey, which is not even their property to go. It's not a public road, it's a private road that we maintain. So that's my primary concerns. I don't, really want to get into a lot of trivia that, you guys probably don't need to hear about, but, as an expanding school and other traffic issues that were brought up today, like people cutting through there as a convenience, I just don't see a way to regulate this. I don't see a way that it's going to be monitored. I don't see a way that, we're supposed to call code enforcement to have them come out and monitor when we start seeing these backups. And our people trying to get into the complex are now like going, hey, several properties have just sold. There's plans to build buildings and finish the additional lots within the facility. So we're going to have more office traffic going into that same entry. I think the biggest problem is in season, when all the kids are in school and when people are, that road is going to be crazy. It's more and more people here every day. We have this mass migration. And then we're going to be attempting to turn left and right out of that facility is going to be a nightmare. That's my opinion. I know you've done some traffic studies. I've lived here for 22 years, so I kind of know what happens down here. I'm expecting to see some real challenges. And I don't think it's not in the best interest of our people that live in that community, or that work in that community, which is going to be a growing number as well. So if they were to combine with coastal cottages and have a different ingress, egress, that potentially down in the future maybe even has a light, something to that effect, that would make sense. It would also create a frontage road, in effect, for them to do their queuing on. That's on their own property, and they had just sold the property south of them, which was as large as the site that they're talking about. They just sold that, I think, last year. It would have made sense to hang on to that, but they sold it to the coastal cottages people. So all of these factors are just something that I think you need to consider, because it's my obligation to express the concerns of not only me, but the others in our group. Thank you. Do you have any
Mr. Chair, I
questions
have
or
a
anything?
question.
go ahead, please, Mr. Ben.
I think you raised some valid points. By the same token, I think this whole thing comes down to, once again, what does a homeowner do who feels they're being negatively, impacted by the traffic flowing down Mango? What is the recourse? And I ask this of anybody in the room. It could be staff, it could be perhaps the applicant. What is the recourse, say, when there are complaints relative to people not complying with what the stipulations are by staff? So what are the options a homeowner has to get resolution to their complaint, assuming that it's valid? Who do they call?
And just real quick also, I'm sorry, but I don't mean to interrupt you, but I've just thought of something that, this queuing situation, it will potentially create obstruction of that whole entry, because no one's really talking about the people exiting. They're just talking about the people coming in. So they're also going to be exiting in the same tight corridor. There's going to be a bottleneck. And it also, in that time period, creates emergency issues as well, to be considered in the event that there was some sort of, somebody's having a heart attack. How do you get in there quickly with this obstruction in this narrow pathway?
It seems that your major concern is with the, excuse me, the AM traffic. Because
Yes.
at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, hardly anybody
Well,
leaves
it's-
a business.
It shouldn't obstruct. Some of the businesses are more retail-oriented, where they're, let's say, physicians or whatever, where they have people during those hours coming and going,
But
customers.
it's not exactly what you would call a
Right,
mass
it wouldn't be,
exodus,
it wouldn't
rush
be
hour.
identical to that.
Right.
Yes, you're right.
Right, and your concern is mostly, I heard you, with the 160 students, not so much with the 90. Am I
Yeah,
correct?
Yes, I don't believe that the 90 will be a big problem. I think that when they get to 160, I mean, keep in mind, you're adding more teachers, you're adding more staff, you're adding.
Yeah, well, that would have to be, come up again for
I think the
for
90
approval, so-
would probably need to use their future site plan to keep everybody off the roads. But still, again, it's like, how do you stop Via Del Rey? How do you stop that portion that they don't even own, that we pay to pave? That's like, how do they stop that portion from being people blocking there, because people are waiting to turn left or right? I don't see a way to prevent that in human nature or otherwise.
And I don't know if that's a question that we can answer. I think the city maybe has some comment on that, Eric? On that issue?
We can request that they have additional, or we can require that they have additional staff members out there making sure that there's no overflow in the Via Del Rey section.
All right.
In regards to noncompliance, you can contact code enforcement, or like I said, they can contact us, and we're all working during the week. We'd be happy to come right out there.
Jerry?
Yes, I'm curious what the procedure is going to be to authorize Phase 2 from Phase 1. Is there going to be a formal process of submittal and review?
It will be a development order process because they will need to build a new structure. So any site improvements will require that. And so then they'll have their engineering review, the traffic review at that time again, and we'll make sure that it's functioning the way it
So
needs
they'll
to.
review traffic again at that point?
Correct.
And that's triggered by going to 91 students?
At this time, 91 students, unless they can accommodate more within their building and within their queuing plan.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Any additional comment?
Mary?
Ma'am, please?
I don't do public speaking, so I'm very nervous, and I hope I can remember everything because I don't have notes.
Just be yourself.
Oh, God.
Will you state your name for us,
Yes,
please?
Mariana Toledo, and I live at 28451 Mango Drive, which is pretty much almost at the end, and I've been there for 25 years, since 1995. So my first question is does anybody know what end city maintenance means? Because I think it's at 28355, there's a sign that says end city maintenance. So I don't know who maintains the rest of that patch of Mango Drive, but that's part of where you get into the church parking lot. And I was just wondering what that means, who's responsible for maintaining that road. I'm just curious, because right now the school is very neighborly, and I appreciate the whole thing with the cones and all that business, but what if the school is not the tenant in several years? Then we have precedent set and grandfathered in, and I know there's been a lot of emphasis on Mango Drive being a public road, but if we get somebody in those buildings, maybe in 10 years that aren't so neighborly, are we going to have crazy amount of traffic down Mango? There's only 30-some residents down there. It's a very quiet residential street. So I'm just wondering, is it possible, rather than cones, can we just block off Mango Drive so that it isn't used as a thoroughfare? Not just by you guys, but from what you were saying, the cut through from Vanderbilt and people trying to get around. I don't know if that's an option for us or not.
I think Mr. Rooney can answer that.
Well, to answer the first question, all that the sign in city maintenance indicates is that the city does not maintain beyond that sign.
Do we know who does?
No, that's a factual issue. I don't have the answer to that.
Okay, well, I appreciate that.
It's possible that the remainder of the right-of-way is in public ownership, or it could be a privately maintained right-of-way. All I can tell you is what that means, is that it ends at that point. With respect to the second part of your question, which was what happens if the school goes away years from now? Well, if the school goes away, effectively the use goes away as well. So you're not establishing a commercial entitlement to use those buildings at the same rate. So whatever use would come in to replace the school or in the church, whether it's just an expanded church or whether it's some kind of new facility, maybe a medical facility, I'm throwing that out there, they would have to come through and be reviewed separately. So it's not like they create a vacuum and anyone can just step into it. No.
What if this nice lady goes away and we get another lady that's not so nice at the school and doesn't care about cones and lets people use, because a lot of emphasis again has been made, it's a public road. So,
You mean just if the property is left vacant?
well, or she's very nice, but what if she's not around in 5 years and we get somebody that says, I don't care if they use Mango Drive, let them enter and exit through Mango Drive. So right now, there seems to be a nice arrangement and an agreement, but what happens if that changes?
Forgive me, Ms. Toledo, but I'm a little confused with your question.
Yes.
Are you concerned with what happens if the school goes away? And then there are no cones? Is that what bothers
I'm
you?
concerned with the lack of regulation, because it seems like they're asking people not to use Mango Drive, but if they stop asking people not to use Mango Drive, it's a public road, so,
Well, but if that's the case, they would be in violation of the conditions of the approval. They just
Okay.
can't do that.
okay.
Am I correct, Mr. Rooney?
Correct. I mean, we talk about regulation. The regulations would be what you see up on the charts there. And
Okay.
so if, going back to the last question too, if we get to a violation status, then the city code enforcement, basically the use gets revoked.
Right.
Okay, understood. Then-
Okay.
then
Thank you
that-
for your
I think that makes
interest.
me happy.
Thank you very
I
much.
think I got everything. Thank you.
That's fine. You did very well. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if there's no more public comment at this point, it would be appropriate to ask the applicant if they have any rebuttal. Oh, I'm sorry, there does appear to be one more.
Oh, one other question.
I don't really have a question, I have a statement.
Oh, fine. Will you state your name, please, for the record?
I'm Kathy Dimes. I live at 28337 Mango Drive. And we have offered the residents on our road to pay for a gate there at the church to close it off, so there will be no traffic. Nobody can run their golf cart through or cars going through. So we have offered that. I don't know the stipulations, the laws, the rules to how to get that put in, but that has been put out there for us to pay for that, to help solve the problem.
In other words, to put a gate so that you can't make a left-hand turn or a right-hand turn from Mango Drive into the school parking lot.
Right, and
Well,
then anybody in the, they would have to.
That's an interesting question, and again, I don't know, maybe Mr. Rooney can help us. Who would be responsible for that? The county, the state?
But I would ask the applicant to rebut. It's this public comment is not really a question and answer point, but I would let the applicant
Okay,
rebut that.
fine.
Okay. But I just put it out there that we are willing to pay.
Is that all public comment?
Any other public comments? Okay.
Ma'am,
Oh, you, please,
Please come up and identify
please take the
yourself.
podium.
Yes, my name's Donna Howell. I've lived here just about 30 years on Mango Drive, and I've noticed recently that the traffic and speeding has increased tremendously. And a lot of it does go to the church, and a lot of it does avoid the light at Vanderbilt and Beach Road. And there is a road, Katrina, which you make a right to Vanderbilt, and you can access the church from that. And it's just getting ridiculous. I even had a dog killed on that road. A lady stopped to let him cross, and some guy went around her and boom, nailed him. It's just, and we walk our dog all the time up and down that road, and it's very dangerous.
This is a current condition.
Yes.
The school has taken steps to avoid traffic from Mango Drive going into the school and church, but the other issue is really not an issue that the school or the church can address. That's a totally different issue. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Of people going down Mango Drive at an excessive rate of speed, it's not impacted by this.
They go to the school.
I'm sorry?
They go to the school. I've seen many mothers flying down the road going to pick their kids up.
But that will change because
I
of the
hope so,
restrictions.
before there's a dangerous problem.
One of the conditions of this approval, if we approve it, is to remedy this issue, that this issue should not be an issue. And if it's violated, then they have a problem.
Well, I hope so.
Well, that's one of the conditions.
Let's see, okay.
Well, we hope so.
All right,
Well, thank
me
you
too.
very much for your comments.
You're welcome.
Another comment, please.
You're not going to see me behind the podium. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I just want to just let you know what my.
Your
feelings are.
name is, please?
My name is Diana Toledo, that's my sister over there. And
Oh,
I live-
okay.
I live at 28355 Mango Drive, which is pretty much across from where the entrance is.
All right.
The only thing I just want to let you guys know is that that used to be a beautiful, quiet, perfectly balanced, a little bit of commerce, a little bit of residential, nice, well-balanced area, quiet street. That's why I bought there. And now with this, you're changing the character of that, of the whole area. It's like, there's no room to expand this. This is a better suited project for an area that's already it's an industrial area, an urban area, that's ready to accept growing and expanding businesses. But I'm just letting you know, it's not a nice, pretty street anymore. It's getting ugly. And this is just not in keeping with the concept of a residential, quiet, dead-end street. So far, it's fine, it's nice, but getting any bigger, that just belongs somewhere else. That's all I'm saying. And I know the cottages aren't being discussed here, but we're going to have the cottages. We're going to have the dumpster of the cottages, which is a nursing home facility, right in front of her driveway. I can throw a mango and get it into the dumpster with the diapers and the food, rotten food. And now, on top of that, now we're getting more traffic, more parking, more crammed in spaces, more traffic jams. And then pretty soon the trailers are coming. So it's not what I signed up for. You're really changing what this place is. Right now, perfect, no problem. Perfectly balanced, good. So that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Any other questions from the public? Okay, sir?
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to reaffirm that both myself as a professional planner and staff determined that we meet the criteria for the conditional use. And the conditions that staff has proffered, I think, are very fair and reasonable conditions that will control the traffic issue, which you've heard is single most issue, I think, that the neighborhood faces. And with the institution of the cone placement, we know that Grace Classical Academy can continue to be a good neighbor, that their traffic will not be utilizing Mango. I mean, the church has been there for 30 years, and they have been operating, and churches, as Mr. Wynn knows, have morphed and they take on different character, but the minister is very, very adamant that he's instructing his his folks not to utilize Mango Drive. You can't get 100% compliance. There may be a resident on Mango Drive who attends church. And I will say, as a person who monitors traffic out my window every single day, and our firm owns 2 buildings in the office park that Mr. Ruel mentioned, we're fully supportive of the church and the daycare activities. We think it brings a nice character. We have several employees who use the daycare facility and hope to use the school. So there'll be shared trips associated with that. I know some of the teachers have children. So the traffic impacts are pretty negligible from the big picture when you look at what this use is for the K through 8 school. And I will say that, Mango Drive, it is a public street, and you have the fire and rescue district located on the street. They utilize the street almost every day. I see them drive through the drive aisle that we're talking about. The post office uses it. UPS uses it. FedEx uses it. People coming to the eye doctor use it. And I don't know, some of those residents may be Mango Drive residents, but you can't prohibit people from using the public street. All we can do is try to limit the impact to those public streets. And we think the conditions adequately do that. So I hope you can recommend approval subject to staff conditions, as modified by you, sir.
Just one last question. Then you are in agreement with the recommendations made by the staff?
Yes, and we would also, I would just add that we're comfortable putting up 2 sets of cones if that is a solution, as well as doing quarterly reporting as staff recommended.
That's just.
Excuse me.
Go ahead.
I just have a question. Maybe I'm a little bit confused. I thought I heard that Mango Drive, in some respects, was private road, and then I'm hearing it's public. So which is it?
Well, there's a sign that says that city maintenance ends. It doesn't mean that it's not a public road. The city took over maintenance from Lee County many years ago for several roadways. There are several roadways, I understand, that they did not.
It's Via Del Rey, we heard, was a private road.
Via Del Rey, Mr. Royal indicated, it's a private,
not Mango Drive.
publicly
It's not
platted
Mango.
road.
Okay, thank
Mango is in
That
large
was the
part public.
confusion.
That's the
Yes.
confusion, yeah. Well, thank you.
So thank you.
All right. If there is no more public comment, if there is no more comment from staff or from the applicant, I will entertain a motion to approve the application provided that all of the conditions, of the staff are met. May I have a motion to that effect, please?
I would so move, just perhaps, would we want to emphasize, Mr. Chair, the emphasis on monitoring of school enrollment numbers more frequently, as well as monitoring the traffic control?
Well, I think we heard the staff say that they could do that if we wanted to.
What I recommend, Mr. Hershenson, is maybe that you make your motions contingent on the revised conditions as agreed to by the applicant.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
That's great.
Then I'll change the motion to approve it with the revised conditions as approved by the applicant. May I have a motion, please?
So move.
We need a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Do we have any discussion at all before we vote?
Discussion?
Yeah, I still have, I'm very uncomfortable with this one, because special exceptions are all about impact. It's illegal, special exceptions are all about impact. The special exception is a legal use, and what we're judging is in this location are its impacts such that it's okay to put it there, or are its impacts so egregious that we can't allow it to go here? Go ahead.
Exactly what impact concerns you?
Well,
What's a negative impact?
Has Public Works reviewed the traffic study that was included here?
I'll answer for staff, but yes, they did. Yeah.
Pardon?
Yes, staff did review our traffic
No,
analysis.
Public Works, not the planning staff. Did Public Works review it?
Yes, I have been sworn. Thank you, Ms. Rainey. For the record, I'm John Dolmer, Community Development Director. Tom Ross, the transportation engineer, has reviewed it. Public Works has also looked at it, but as a cursory review. It's mainly done by our engineering staff.
And their findings were?
That the conditions were appropriate for the use.
The conditions, the queuing conditions, and what about the through access using a parking lot?
I know that keeps coming up as a topic, but I think we're putting cones up to limit that, so I don't know what through access we're discussing. Because if the cones are up to prevent the access to go through the site, what
Well,
access
the
is going
cones,
through
the
the
cones
site.
are just there for the morning loading and afternoon,
Correct,
loading.
to address the use that's being requested
Right.
today.
It's not cut off completely to Mango. It's just those certain an hour a day or something.
Several hours, but yes, during the drop-off and pick-off time. And when we're talking about other times a day, those would be addressing the church use, which is existing today. So that use is not currently being recommended or proposed to this board.
And the
If it helps, we will put. But I want to step in a little bit here, just on the condition of, we talked about a gate, we talked about, this is a site that has 2 access points, which is, I believe, a condition of fire safety and a public safety component. So this goes back to the same issue of Mango. Maybe people don't have uses to go down Mango, but it is a public right-of-way. It's a practical consideration running into the effect of a safety issue. We require that commercial and institutional sites have 2 access points. Reviewing the site plan again, there are only 2 access points, both onto public roads.
Right.
And there's going to be a small portion of Via Del Rey and Mango Drive, but there's going to be a portion of the traveling public who are going to abuse that from time to time. And the issue I would have with a condition that says it's blocked at all times is that's probably in violation of another code requirement.
Well, the safety vehicles can use knockdown barriers. I mean, that's no problem at all for them. And I don't particularly care whether FedEx has to drive around the block or not. That's their job. Okay, I don't understand a blanket, requirement for 2 access points serving a commercial enterprise.
Well, the issues there, you can gate accesses, you can do, but we're doing all this on the fly to address what issue, I'm not entirely sure. That's the concern I have, is that we're addressing through the special exception other issues that could be in violation of other approvals. So there was an approval at one point that opened those 2 access points, and we're talking about adjusting that here on the fly because of some evidence that there may be vehicles that travel through there on occasion. I'm not sure how that occasional traffic is impacted by this project or this approval, or because all the conditions that this board has to impose upon the special exception have to be related to the impacts of that special exception request. The traffic off hour from pickup and drop off by FedEx or someone else, I'm not sure that there's a nexus there.
No,
between
we're
the
getting
two.
involved, I think, in ancillary issues here. I mean, I think it is, these questions have all been raised and, in my opinion, adequately answered. And I think we should just vote. So there is a motion on the floor, which has been seconded, and I call for a vote to approve the motion. I vote to approve it.
Well, could I suggest a roll call, a roll vote with that?
All right,
expedited?
roll call, fine, go ahead.
Chairman
Start
Russ.
with Ms. Waterhouse.
Yay. Linda Waterhouse.
Yay.
Gerald Benson.
Yay.
Ben Hershenson.
Yes.
Anthony Bracio.
Yes.
Russ Wynn.
Yes.
Gary Gambrell.
Gambrell abstains. For the record, the reasons are that 3 business days to review something this complex is grossly inadequate. Gambrell abstains.
Bruce Galloway.
I vote no, primarily because I don't think the traffic impact issues have been studied thoroughly.
As a result of the roll call vote, the motion is carried and the approval is granted.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time and
And thanks all
consideration.
the members of the public who have contributed.
I think the next one's easier. This is reuse of the shopping center. We're going to see that all over the country. And this is the first one that's coming for us.
Yeah, I would think so, yeah. Look, I think we would like to take a little 10-minute break, no longer than that, the restrooms or what have you, okay? Thank you. The session is now back in session.
Backing out. Yeah, I think this will work. I don't think this
The next case we have is Discovery Day Academy Special Exception. a special exception request for a school, non-commercial, other use, Discovery Day Academy within the community commercial zoning district. We hear from the staff first.
And before we get started, is there anyone here who was not previously sworn?
Oh, look at you.
Sworn at?
Morning, Mr. Chairman and Board. You should be warmed up. This is going to be a very similar request to what you have just previously seen. It's also a request for a school. Difference is site location, and there are obviously different concerns about how this site functions versus how the previous site functioned. Based on its surface, this was not a location that we were all in favor of. However, since we've had discussions with the applicant and come to some sort of resolutions in terms of conditions of operation and how the site should function, we believe that we are in a place where God willing, the creek doesn't rise, the site functions the way it should. If you look at the conditions that are listed, we're trying to address mainly traffic and function, the fact that this is more of a commercial site. There is also another elementary school on the south side of Burnwood Drive that's going to have similar drop-off and pickup times, so you've seen some conditions that are addressing access onto that road, and also off 41 further north. There'll be presentations by the applicant and by staff to kind of flesh out the details of these. However, I believe what you're going to hear is a situation where, while this may not be the ideal location for a school, we believe we have gotten it to a place where it can function and the applicant can operate within the conditions. So if somebody says something different, they haven't told me yet. So.
Thank you. May we hear from the applicant, please?
Good morning, members of the board. My name is Tina Ekblad. I'm the president and director of planning at Morris DePue Associates. I'm here today representing the Discovery Day Academy, and with me is Elizabeth Basehart, the owner and operator of the academy. The academy is a private elementary school and daycare that has been operating in Southwest Florida for over a decade. This site is a relocation site from their existing location. Before I continue with introductions for the rest of the team, I want to thank you for continuing on with this hearing today. I know you had a motion to table the items, and we genuinely appreciate you continuing to hear this case. As you know, the school year starts in August, and in just a few days it'll be July, so we do appreciate your time and effort here today on this special meeting. Our project team today includes Bill Morris, who's the chairman and director of engineering for Morris DePue Associates. He has been qualified as an expert in civil engineering and transportation engineering previously in front of this board, and his resume is on file. He's going to go through some of the circulation items that Mr. Dolmer just mentioned. I myself am also a certified planner. I will be here to answer any technical questions you may have, but the case in chief will be presented by Ms. Cindy Leal. She is a project planner with Morris DePue. And I would ask that she be qualified as an expert in this forum today. She does have a master's degree in urban and regional planning from the University of Florida. And while securing that degree, she worked full-time for 2 different planning firms in town. She is a resident of the city of Bonita Springs and formerly was a senior planner with the Lee County School District. So she has provided expert testimony regarding school planning and other community planning items in the past. I have emailed her resume to the clerk, and it is on file. With that, I would like to turn it over to Cindy, provided you'll make a finding that she be qualified in land use and school planning today. And then Ms. Basehart will provide you some background information regarding the school operation. Is there any objections?
There's no objection.
No objection.
Okay, thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Cindy Leal. I'm here to answer any questions that you may have for me regarding the expert witness.
If there's, what we're asking for at this time is, well, Mr. Morris and Ms. Glad have been previously accepted as expert witnesses. I'm sorry,
Cindy Leal.
Ms. Leal has not ever been before the zoning board, and we were asking to see if she would be considered an expert for land use and school concerns and purposes.
I have no objection to her qualifications to be considered an expert.
Okay.
As long as the rest of the board has no objection, we'll listen. Please make your presentation.
Okay, well, good morning, everyone. My name is Cindy Leal. I'm a project planner with Morris DePue Associates. I'm going to be presenting the special exception request for the Discovery Day Academy project, but I believe Elizabeth is going to be giving us a little bit of background information on the school and its operations first.
Good morning. My name is Elizabeth Bassard, and I'm the founder and head of school at Discovery Day Academy. We're a 21st century project-based learning school, and we're celebrating a decade of leadership within our community and have a nationally recognized progressive school program that has educated over 1,000 students over the past 10 years. But more importantly, we're home to over 20 staff members, many of which as a head of school and understanding turnover in my field have been with me for over a decade. It's a long time to dedicate your career to a single school and its mission. As a school, we align ourselves with a micro school model. As a doctoral student at Vanderbilt, this is one of my areas of study, and this model consists of a student body less than 150 students. The small environment allows our school to provide individualized learning with a social emotional focus, particularly for children in the most important ages of brain development from birth to age 10. So our school environment is a family and functions on a very small scale. And in no way can it be compared to a traditional public or even private setting in regards to size or its daily functioning. We have begun a $1.3 million renovation on the new campus, and we're racing toward our fall opening deadline. The site was one of the few available spaces in close proximity to our current campus that included both a green space for play and functioned as a standalone building. I also believe it to be noteworthy and must mention that at our current campus, we have less parking as well as less linear feet of queuing space for pickup and drop-off than the proposed school site. One of the reasons we were excited about this site was doubling our parking and also having additional queuing space. We have never encountered a queuing issue where we are currently at, backing up onto North Commons Drive at the height of our enrollment, which at the time was 180 students. Our capacity is much less where we're going. This will be the same for the new location with less occupancy, more parking, and linear feet for our car line. Based on the way we function, we will not exceed the use of our own private parking lot. We only wish to continue to provide jobs to our longstanding professional teachers and an education to our longstanding student body. This is not merely a new school site, but rather the relocation of a school with a decade of history within our community. We are a loved and deeply rooted school within the community, and I believe that our relocation to Promenade will only enhance the community through our meticulous care of the property and respectful nature as a school community. I can speak for myself and the culture I've built within my school, both my staff as well as the parents. We have a deep-seated respect for each other, and they have always followed our school's parking policies and things of that nature because we are a school family and it is made up of many professionals within our community. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Can we go to the next slide? We've already gone through the project team. The one person that isn't present is Jeff Wright, our attorney. He wasn't able to make it today, but I did want to mention that there is an attorney for this project. Next slide, please. The request is for a private non-commercial school at an existing building. The building is located at the northeast corner of South Tamiami Trail and Burnwood Parkway within the Prado at Spring Creek Shopping Center. Most of you may recognize this location as the former site of Gulf Coast Coin and Jewelry. The future land use designation is general commercial, and it is located within the community commercial zoning district. Please note there will not be an increase in building footprint as part of this request despite the addition of a second floor internal to the structure. The only external structural addition being proposed is a fenced playground to be located to the east of the existing building. The former location of the Discovery Day Academy was 23601 North Commons Drive. This location has a Bonita address, but is technically within the Village of Estero boundary since the village's incorporation. Previously it was within unincorporated Lee County. It is anticipated that 112 children will enroll at the school. Of these 112 children, only 72 will be enrolled in kindergarten through 5th grade. The remaining 40 students will be enrolled in the daycare/preschool component of the facility. There are 15 to 20 employees programmed to work at the facility. The existing building footprint is 10,000 square feet, and it is proposed that the play area will be relocated from the former school site to the new school site. Walkways are being extended to improve pedestrian circulation at the site. It can be noted in the yellow arrows on the screen. The subject property has 67 parking spaces in the parking area immediately to the north of the building, of which 3 are handicap spaces. It is proposed that parents dropping off children ages infant to 4 years old will need to park their cars and either walk the child inside the building or have a staff member escort the child from the parked car to the building. All other parents may utilize the existing loop in the parking area to drop off and pick up children. There are a range of uses in proximity to the proposed school site. The most proximate uses are generally those located within the Prado at Spring Creek Shopping Center, which includes a few restaurants, a theater, and retail establishments. Immediately to the south is Burnwood Parkway Retail and Offices. To the southeast is the San Mirage residential development consisting of condominiums. You can't see it here on the screen, but further south of San Mirage is Spring Creek Elementary School, which is a public institution. To the west of the subject property is South Tamiami Trail, and further west is the Pelican Landing residential development. The subject property is located in the General Commercial Future Land Use Designation. Policy 1.1.14 of the Bonita Plan states that the general commercial future land use is intended to accommodate a wide range of commercial uses serving the general population of the city. Per subsection A, appropriate uses include a wide range of commercial retail services for residents and visitors. This includes hotels, motels, offices, light industrial uses, schools, recreation, public and semi-public uses. The proposed school is a for-profit institution providing a service of educational instruction to students for a fee. The Bonita Plan defines commercial uses as activities within land areas which are predominantly connected with the sale, rental, and distribution of products or performance of services. The school use is permitted by the General Commercial Future Land Use, and the school provides a service to the city and its residents consistent with Policy 1.14 and the Bonita Plan's definition of a commercial use. The project is also consistent with Objective 1.11, which requires redevelopment to occur in areas of the city with public infrastructure. The Prado at Spring Creek Shopping Center is in the Community Commercial Zoning District. The purpose and intent of the CC District is to permit the designation of suitable locations for medium to large-scale, consumer-oriented commercial facilities, particularly for multiple occupancy complexes known as community or regional shopping centers, and to facilitate their proper development and use. In addition to the retail sale of consumer goods, this district is intended to permit a wide range of services, financial and other, including business and professional offices, all arranged in discrete commercial centers or evolving business districts. Private schools are permitted in the CC zoning district through the special exception process and are classified as non-commercial schools. The CC zoning district is intended to provide for the retail and service needs of the city. Discovery Day Academy is a private school providing for-profit education instruction to students. Therefore, the use is consistent with the CC zoning district. The location is highly appropriate for the proposed private school use. The neighboring communities of Estero and North Naples have other private educational institutions located within a similarly configured standalone building near commercial establishments. Additionally, the redevelopment of a commercial building for a school is not a new concept to Lee County, which has successfully achieved the redevelopment of at least 2 large public elementary schools. Rama C. Page and G. Weaver Hicks have high enrollment figures with over 815 students per school, and they were both former Kmart's. Discovery Day Academy would be a very small-scale example of the same practice. Staff has echoed some concerns over potential impacts to Burnwood Parkway. Burnwood Parkway is a cut-through, city-maintained local roadway. Burnwood Parkway runs from South Tamiami Trail to Old 41. As noted on the screen, it is one of 3 cut-throughs used by locals to traverse from South Tamiami Trail to Old 41 when north of Bonita Beach Road. From Bonita Beach Road to the northern boundary of Bonita Springs, there are 3 east-west roadways. There is Strike Lane, which is to the north of Burnwood Parkway itself, and then to the south of Burnwood Parkway is Terry Street. The only development to rely solely on Burnwood Parkway for access is the condominium development of San Mirage. All other developments adjacent to Burnwood Parkway, including the subject property, have at least one other means of ingress-egress that is not Burnwood. Another such development is Spring Creek Elementary School, a public institution with an enrollment of over 650 students. Spring Creek Elementary has direct access to Elementary Way, which is a city-maintained local roadway that runs from Burnwood Parkway to Cedar Creek Drive, both of which have direct access to Tamiami Trail. We have reached out to the School District of Lee County to determine if there are existing traffic issues on Burnwood Parkway. In an email dated June 15, 2021, the principal of Spring Creek Elementary School reported that she had not observed any traffic issues. Furthermore, the procedures to address traffic concerns when the concern is being generated by a Lee County public school are outlined in the interlocal agreement between the City of Bonita Springs and the School District of Lee County, which was executed in 2008. And with that, I will let my colleague, Mr. Bill Morris, speak to the traffic and circulation of the site.
Thank you, Cindy. Good morning. For the record, my name is Bill Morris. As introduced earlier, I am chairman of Morris DePue Associates and director of engineering. I'm a registered professional engineer in the state of Florida, and I appreciate the opportunity to discuss this project with you here this morning. Purpose of this slide is to just further acclimate you to the surrounding area with regard to traffic facilities. You'll see there are 2 signalized intersections on either the north and south ends of Prado Shops, which is the development that the subject property is contained within. Those intersections are Timberwild up here at the north and Burnwood Parkway that you've heard mentioned previously to the south. In addition to that, the shopping center has a significant access point here, kind of that I've referred to or will refer to as the midpoint access, which is a thoroughfare into the middle of the shopping center. There is also a road that traverses parallel to Tamiami Trail, here referred to as Chamber of Commerce Drive. These are all in some fashion publicly maintained roadways, as indicated down here based on the agency who has maintenance authority. Next slide, please. Again, just to kind of orient you to the different uses that are part of this development at large. We have a number of different commercial activities going on, including a movie theater here and a number of restaurants, a Walgreens that are all operating in the facility. Excuse me. We started out this application process for the special exception by submitting a waiver request, citing a reduction in trips from the prior use permitted for the property, and were advised by staff that could not be approved due to primarily, I guess, the concerns related to traffic issues with Spring Creek Elementary and Burnwood, and concerns that there were conflicts created between the 2 uses. Upon which we prepared a traffic analysis to determine what the project impacts from operating the school would be on the Burnwood intersection. Next slide, please. As you heard mentioned before, the concerns relate to the queuing of vehicles due to the drop-off and pickup of students at Spring Creek Elementary, backing up along the entrance, along Elementary Way up to and on, I suppose, Burnwood Parkway. Next slide, please. The first analysis, traffic impact analysis that we prepared was focused on the impacts to Burnwood Parkway, where we looked at the worst-case scenario of distributing 100% of the elementary school traffic from the project site to the Burnwood Tamiami Trail intersection, and how those were handled by the signalized intersection here at Burnwood and Tamiami Trail. The analysis was based on a methodology that we had worked out with staff, and we performed traffic counts at Tamiami Trail and Burnwood as a part of that effort to quantify those impacts. Next slide, please. The impacts from the elementary school, based on our analysis, were inconsequential. We established through the traffic analysis that in the worst case, the queuing related to the project resulted in an increase of 1.4 vehicles in the peak hour in addition to this intersection. At 1.6 vehicles per hour, I'm sure you can appreciate that that is a inconsequential impact to that intersection. In addition, and we had a couple of different site visits during school times for Spring Creek Elementary, where we were not able to witness the queuing of vehicles onto or around Burnwood, either during the traffic counts or subsequent to that. We've acknowledged to staff that it's quite possible that the reduction in physical attendance at Spring Creek due to COVID is potentially a cause for that, but unfortunately we were not able to recreate the conditions that were the focus of staff's concerns. Next slide, please. In addition to the traffic impacts related to Burnwood, staff had indicated concerns related to queuing in the project, a theme that you've heard previously here today. And the traffic plan, circulation plan was developed that we have submitted and as part of your packet to address those concerns. In addition to that particular item, staff had indicated a continued concern related to traffic impacts on Burnwood, at which point we offered to require the attendees of this school, of this privately owned and operated school, to not use Burnwood, but rather to use the other two access points available, the Midpoint and Timberwild, for sole access to this facility for both the AM and the PM drop-off and pickup. We discussed with staff an analysis that they had deemed necessary in order to demonstrate that no adverse impacts would be found for the operation of the signalized intersection at Timberwild, and determined that a 10% or less of the demand at the intersection would constitute a de minimis impact. Next slide, please. So we sought out to do a comparison based on what uses would be currently allowed to operate in this facility without having to go through the special exception process that would be allowed by zoning and would be consistent with the parking that is provided on site. And there are a few different uses that we found were within that range of scheduled uses, being high turnover sit-down restaurant, variety store, and convenience market. And we came up with a couple different scenarios whereby we quantified the trips related to those particular uses, comparing those to the trips for the proposed school and daycare. Next slide, please. The analysis that we provided to staff with this second traffic impact statement accounted for a couple of different scenarios and found that the project trips were significantly less than what could have gone into this location and are less than what is relative to the shopping center as a whole. Again, I refer back to the existing uses in the surrounding Prado shops that include movie theater and a number of different restaurants. The exiting impacts to Timberwild and the midpoint intersection, again, are less than 10% of the capacity, the current demand. So in either case, we believe that this demonstrates a minimal or de minimis impact to that facility. Next slide, please. In addition, in terms of the traffic operations plan, and considering that no use of Burnwood Parkway would occur, we have indicated a desire to use cones, a theme that you've heard before, to prohibit traffic from using Chamber of Commerce during the pickup and drop-off periods. Additionally, this plan illustrates the queuing and the approach length where the red path that's marked on there is the arrival and blue represents the departure, showing where the vehicles will enter here at this main access point, and that we will have facility staff located around to be able to help make sure that the operation works the way that it is intended to, and to be able to observe any issues that occur and be able to address them at the time and be able to make adjustments that are necessary for the operation to continue without issue and in accordance with the plan. Next slide. Concerns related to queuing, another theme you've heard before today. We've done some analysis based on queuing for the project. We used a two vehicle per minute cycle time or departure rate for the facility to demonstrate a worst case for the queue. Represents a 21-minute longest delay for 72 students, all being independently picked up by individual vehicles. Obviously, that's not necessarily the way that the real world works. Having myself spent significant parts of my life in pickup and drop-off lines for my kids, I can tell you that there are a lot of families that have multiple children at these facilities. Our client has indicated that indeed is the case. But again, this reflects the worst case where 42 vehicles would by this measure, be the longest queue for the site. Next slide, please. And illustrating what that would look like by the green rectangles being individual vehicles, you can see that we can accommodate enough vehicles on the site. This is 42 vehicles. In the event that we need to, there are significant areas within the parking lot that are available for overflow. As you heard before, the facility staffing is 15 to 20 people. There are significantly greater number of parking spaces than are necessary for staff, so we have plenty of overspill area to handle if there is needed, and be able to avoid having any vehicles stacked back onto Chamber of Commerce Drive. Next slide, please. And again, as you heard previously from our client, from the applicant, this is up at the top. This shows a photograph, an aerial photo of her existing facility with an existing operation queue length here from this driveway up to the porte cochere of about 320 feet. The same relative distance inside the proposed site is about 330 feet, so it's a very slight but nominal increase. And again, there are no instances where current operation has experienced stacking out onto the street. She operates a a facility that runs pretty clean and well and is well organized. Otherwise, I would submit to you that she would not be a successful business operator. Next slide, please. Additionally, staff had indicated concerns relative to safety in the surrounding areas, this being a commercial plaza that this school is going into. Just to highlight some of the things that are located around the facility, you have an existing type F curb and gutter here. This is the school site right here, and this is the eastern face of the site. You're looking south on Chamber of Commerce Drive. Type F curb and gutter is considered a non-mountable curb, which means that vehicles cannot easily traverse over top of it. That particular curb is defined by Florida Department of Transportation as at the particular speed limit of having a 4-foot clear zone, which means that a vehicle, that all objects are required, that are non-breakable, that would be deleterious to a vehicle straying off that road, should be placed outside of that 4 feet. You have all this row of trees, fire hydrant, and other such items that are and other landscaping that are in that area beyond 4 feet here. And again, we have a relatively low speed limit here. It's not posted, but as with any unposted road in the state of Florida, it has a default speed limit of 30 miles an hour. Next slide, please. And finally, looking at the same situation, same characteristics on Burnwood Parkway, relative to, again, not necessarily the facilities traffic, but traffic surrounding the property. We have a significant row of vegetation here. You can see the building located behind, and in this photo over here. And you can also see a 2-odd-foot deep swale that lines Burnwood Parkway, both of which provide a substantial obstacle to any vehicle traversing beyond those points onto the site. And again, the curb coming around from Chamber of Commerce Drive wraps a little bit onto Burnwood Parkway, providing some additional protection. Posted speed limit on Burnwood Parkway is also 30 miles an hour. And that concludes my review of the traffic analysis. And with that, I will turn it back to Cindy.
The Land Development Code outlines the considerations to be given to special exception cases. First is whether there exist changed or changing conditions that make approval of this request appropriate. We believe that changing demographic conditions contribute to the appropriateness of the request. The student density in Bonita Springs is highest along the old 41 corridor. The previous location was not in proximity to an area of high student density. Furthermore, changing market conditions have played a role in the timeline of the plaza's tenants. Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, the building, whose previous tenants were jewelers, had already been vacant. That previous tenant had relocated to a 1,850 square foot unit within the same plaza as a direct result of changing market conditions. So that tenant went from 10,000 square feet to 2,000 square feet, less than 2,000 square feet. COVID-19 has further impacted the retail industry, causing negative impacts to major local commercial industries, including Hertz and Edison Mall. Should the trend continue, plaza redevelopment will see untraditional uses proposed to be located in previous sites of commercial establishments. As previously stated, the redevelopment of commercial facilities to educational uses is not uncommon. Subsection B states the testimony of any applicant, which would include this presentation. Subsection C, the recommendation of staff, which was for the consideration of this project with conditions. D, the testimony of the public. There were 2 public neighborhood meetings held for this project. 2 members attended the first. 1 gentleman represented San Mirage, and he voiced concerns over 2 items. One was existing traffic on Burnwood occurring twice a day as a result of Spring Creek Elementary School. He also mentioned that if existing restaurants were to change ownership, then they would not be able to obtain an alcoholic beverage license. Those were his 2 concerns. The applicant has already agreed not to utilize Burnwood Parkway. And regarding consumption on premise, state statute prohibits COP within 500 feet of a school. However, there is an exemption for restaurants. Furthermore, Bonita Springs LDC outlines the process by which a new restaurant proposing outdoor consumption on premise within 500 feet of a school may request approval. A special exception may be granted for such projects. Furthermore, the property owner has signed the authorization forms for this application. As a result, the property owner is aware that the school is being located within his plaza, and he is therefore aware of potential impacts to leases and future tenants. A second neighborhood meeting was held after the project was found sufficient. No members of the public were in attendance at that meeting. Subsection E, whether the request is consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the Bonita Plan. The project is consistent with Policy 1.1.14 of the Bonita Plan, which describes the characteristics of the general commercial flu designation and refers to schools as being an appropriate use within this designation. Furthermore, the project is consistent with Objective 1.11, which requires the redevelopment to occur in areas of the city with public facilities. Subsection F, whether the request meets or exceeds the performance and locational standards set forth for the proposed use. The project meets and exceeds all land development code requirements, and while not bound to the state requirements for educational facility standards the way public institutions are, private schools generally try to follow these standards when possible. Per SREF Chapter 5, Section 5, 2D fencing requires that all play areas be separated from surrounding areas by a fence. Further, the minimum fence height listed is 4 feet. The applicant has proposed a 6-foot-tall fence in full compliance with this SREF standard. As further outlined in SREF, fencing and gates shall be constructed of non-flammable, non-electric, safe, durable, and low-maintenance materials. We are exceeding state requirements for educational facilities by relocating the existing 6-foot-tall fence from the current location to the subject property. And G, whether the request will protect, conserve, or preserve environmentally critical areas and natural resources. The site is fully developed and will not have any impacts to environmentally critical areas and/or natural resources. Next slide. Okay. H, whether the request will be compatible with existing or planned uses. We've discussed the surrounding uses. The nature of the surrounding uses is predominantly commercial in the Prado at Spring Creek Shopping Center. However, there are nearby residential communities, such as San Mirage and Pelican Landing. I, whether the request will cause damage, hazard, nuisance, or other detriment to persons or property. The applicant has agreed to restrict parent access to Chamber of Commerce Drive via Burnwood Parkway. The applicant acknowledges the implementation of the traffic circulation will take coordination with parents, faculty, and staff of the school. That is why the applicant has agreed to very specific conditions regarding the implementation of this plan. Additionally, the city has code enforcement options should they feel the school is not operating as described, and the applicant has agreed to annual monitoring. Additionally, city staff has raised concerns over the location and enclosure of playground enclosure materials. The playground enclosure materials meet and exceed SREF standards. Furthermore, staff analysis of the proposed playground area does not take into account the existing mature vegetation at the site, the non-mountable type F curb along Chamber of Commerce Drive, and the swale along Burnwood Parkway. These features would prevent vehicles from entering the site in the event of an accident. And subsection J, whether a requested use will be in compliance with all general zoning provisions and supplemental regulations pertaining to the use set forth in this chapter. We have provided all the necessary application materials, have held the 2 required public information meetings, and have advertised as required by code. We have reviewed the proposed conditions that staff has provided in the staff report and have some modifications to them. Should we go ahead and present this portion of the presentation now? Or do you, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I have, asking for questions right now, was that, or do you want to continue?
Well, the question is, do you have any questions at the moment, or do you want to let her?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
The question I have specifically deals with the traffic studies. And I noted that they were done, I believe, in March. And I also know that several of the stores or facilities in that Mall have closed. I know that Steinmart, which was on a map, that's long since been closed. I'm not even too sure if the movie theater is still functioning. I'm quite familiar with that. Get to be my age, you go to Walgreens a little bit more often, or pharmacy than you want to, but be that as it may, I've noticed over the past year or two how quiet it has been. Again, the impact of COVID, and certainly a number of businesses, there's quite a dead mall, and hopefully, with the economy improving, hopefully we'll see that change. Now, that's a concern that I would have. Everything comes down to location. And I'm familiar also with the elementary school at the time of day, you know, that I avoid that for safety reasons as well. I can just work around it. But I really do have concerns relative to the traffic. I mean, it's quite open to 41 and so forth. And I wonder how, and please understand, I understand, I'm certainly well aware of the company you're associated with, and it's got an excellent reputation. What I'm trying to focus in on, though, is the validity of that traffic study under the circumstances that currently exist, which I don't consider to be normal. So please, could you respond to that?
Sure. And if I understand your concern, you're simply acknowledging the times in which we are in and the period that we have conducted the particular analysis as it relates to traffic in general. I guess there's two thoughts that I have had in this. To your point, as I mentioned before, we did acknowledge to staff that perhaps the reason why we were not able to see or evaluate the condition related to stacking of vehicles from the elementary, from Spring Creek, is due to the downsized physical enrollment at the schools. Most of the kids are, a good half of the kids, is my understanding, are virtual or were virtual this past year. Notwithstanding also the vacancies that you referred to, I guess the bottom line is that you were right. All those uses, the movie theaters, the restaurants, all those things contribute to traffic on Tamiami Trail and the surrounding roadway network. However, it's important to understand relative to those impacts, we believe, and it's my opinion as an engineer, that the traffic impacts related and associated with this particular operation are relatively incremental. They are so small that they don't make a huge difference one way or another. And so that segment of Tamiami Trail, based on counts from prior year, from 2019, were in level of service C range, which is a nominal operating range for a roadway. That is what the county has identified for that particular link of Tamiami Trail. And I don't feel like this project is going to have a significant impact on those volumes one way or another. There's just not enough use there to generate that much traffic.
Excuse me, did I hear you say two things? Number one, that you expected 2 vehicles per minute?
Yes,
That's a
sir.
little overly optimistic, don't you think?
Even, so 2 vehicles per minute relates to, I guess the question, I guess, would be, what is your concern related to that particular rate?
Well, I'm concerned that the longer the people wait to load the vehicles, the longer the queue.
Yes, sir.
Second thing also that I saw, and I'm very concerned, is you seem to have the people coming in 2 rows, right
Yes, sir.
next to each other. I mean, that is so dangerous for children. I mean, you're going to filter them all into one?
Can we go back to, excuse me 1 second, can we go back to, keep going? There.
Yeah. Am I wrong, or do you anticipate avoiding the queue on the Chamber of Commerce Drive by doubling the cars that way?
So we are, again, this is intended, or this operations plan is intended to avoid putting any traffic on Burnwood. As I illustrated before, we are going to require the parents who sign an agreement with this facility to be able to enroll their kids there to use the other access points. So operating off of Burnwood should not be a consideration. The two vehicles per minute number was used to demonstrate a level of conservativeness for the stacking. As you astutely pointed out, the longer the turnover time, the longer the departure time, the longer the queue gets.
Correct.
So if you look at a faster turnover time, looking at one vehicle every 15 seconds, which would be 4 vehicles a minute. That is probably, it's been my experience, sir, that that's
It's
closer
not
to
going to
what.
happen, I understand as well. But I'm more concerned with this. How do you anticipate getting a child from the first car there to the second car in the second row? I mean, your school buses, you can't pass a school bus if it's stopped. So, I mean, how are you going to guarantee the safety of the children if you do that?
Again, the stacking is indicated to show the worst-case scenario. I would ask our client who operates our facility.
Look, I'm sorry, I don't want to be argumentative, but if you have the worst-case scenario, how are you going to deal with the safety issue? Or have you not thought about that?
Sir, I have participated in these types of pickup and drop-off operations personally, and I can tell you that they are managed. There are staff that are located there who manage the vehicles. The parents are used to doing this. They do it day in and day out. It's not a situation where you're dealing with people who are not familiar with, don't understand the rules. It's their kids that are there, and they are the ones who are protecting their own.
That's
for the most
wonderful.
part.
The parents may recommend it, but the child don't. Oh, there's mommy. And
But
he's gonna
they're
take
not
off.
released that way.
I mean,
Can I ask Elizabeth, our client, to help explain how the pickup and drop-off works? Would that?
I think what is particularly noteworthy is not everyone is picked up at the same time. So we do have staggered dismissal. So for example, kindergarten through second graders, they're dismissed at 3:30, or excuse me, 3:20, whereas the remainder of the students are dismissed around 3:35, 3:40. Our children actually wait inside, and our teachers, we have basically a line of staff, one where our children can wait in the air conditioning and in comfort. We have a staff positioned at the door, and then we have several outside. And we have a system where we call one student at a time. It's a well-oiled machine. I actually took video of this process. And we, to say 2 cars a minute, I can guarantee you we probably do 3 to 4. That is how well-oiled this is. And as I said, because of these staggered drop-off times, all these cars would never queue at that time. A great majority of our school is pre-K, so parents actually park to come in. So this worst-case scenario is not at all representative of over a decade of implementation of policies, of the nature and the way this actually operates. So I think that there's a lot to be taken into consideration for that, and I can't speak for the engineers, but I think they were trying to address staff's issue with Burnwood. However, I don't think it's indicative of how we actually function on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I just want to clarify. I think the issue is that you've addressed the traffic concern on Burnwood, I think. I don't think that's the question. I think the question is you're, a parent in a rush is going to be walking their child in front of another car whose parent may be in a rush. And what happens if that parent drives off and hits the mother of the child?
We have never had that scenario even close to. I can tell you my school community is made up of professionals, lawyers, doctors, you name it, teachers. We have a very concerning school community, to the point that we have a very active PPO that helps to implement school safety procedures, all of these different things. And never have we encountered that issue where we're at now, and we have a porte cochere that actually very similarly runs that way.
So you're prepared to manage that risk?
Yes, sir.
And take the liability of it?
Yes, sir. And we've done so effectively for a 10-year period.
Staff recommends that only timber wild be used as access. You intend to block off the middle road especially also?
Yes, sir. Well, both accesses, I'm sorry, I misunderstood your question. Both accesses north of the property, let's see if we can go back.
Well, then that's in conflict with what the staff recommends. All school traffic shall enter and exit from the northern plaza access point or.
Mr. Chairman, that
So the northern access means the middle road?
Mr. Chairman, I think we probably need to just take a time out real quick. There is a disagreement with staff on what is being proposed, just as a fundamental issue.
Yes.
On the traffic outside of the internal site, on the traffic from what staff's recommending and what the applicant's recommending. So the applicant is presenting their case, staff will have an opportunity to present their recommendation. And
My
the
question
applicant
should
have a
then be addressed to staff. All right, I'm sorry. Any other questions for the applicant?
Well, I was curious, the cones, so you're proposing to block off that whole entrance?
For limited periods of time, yes, sir.
I mean, my concern is that there are a lot of people who may be going to Walgreens and other places on a regular basis, and they're gonna be coming down Burnwood, and they're just gonna automatically turn right in there, thinking that I do it all the time, and all of a sudden, there's gonna be cones there. I mean,
I would
how much
ask-
traffic normally uses that entrance during a normal day, pre-pandemic?
And I think you're getting to the discussion about the conditions themselves and how they're adopted and executed.
I mean, that traffic's now gonna go somewhere else.
Well, there are multiple access points into the shopping center, not just this one, including another one further to the east from Burnwood. Also allows for, to your point, somebody going to the Walgreens could turn up Cleveland or Tamiami Trail and turn back in at
But all
another point.
those people are all gonna have to be diverted out onto 41 and come around.
I believe we'll be able to address that better when we get to the discussion about the conditions.
Can I address this, Russ Wynn, for the record? My wife and I owned Noah's Ark Academy for over a decade, right next to Perkins. We sold it about 3 years ago, 100 kids. And I personally, for every other week, take my grandson to the charter school. It's a zoo. However, it's a manageable zoo. And when you look at the charter school and you see the buses coming in, they're loading and parents allowed to come next to the buses. There is a dance there, and it's staff organizing that and parents understanding the protocol of that. You kind of get into a field. I mean, everybody's respectful and everybody's paying attention to the kids getting in and out. And we saw it at Noah's Ark Academy. There are some, in the mornings and around 3, 4, 5 o'clock, there's a peak time of just people coming in, coming out. And I have yet to hear or see any injuries over the years. It's just that, it's just the nature of it. Everybody's paying attention. You get into a flow of that. If you're not used to that drop off and coming in and out, it sounds a little confusing, but it's workable and it happens every single day. So I'm just sharing that as a,
Thank you very much for the input from experience.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I believe the applicant was going to address the staff proposed conditions, so this may come back up.
Okay. So if we can get to the proposed conditions.
Yeah, speak up a little, please.
Sorry, the proposed conditions. For the proposed conditions, we agree with staff regarding condition 1. This approval is for a special exception to allow the operation of a non-commercial school other use, located at 25355 South Tamiami Trail. This building is located at the southwestern corner of the Prado at Spring Creek Shopping Center. This use is limited to the requested user, Discovery Day Academy only, and shall only allow for 72 students K through 5 when in conjunction with the daycare use. For proposed condition 2, it states any expansion beyond 40 daycare students or 72 elementary students will require additional approvals. We agree with this condition as well. For condition 3, the regular hours of operation are limited to Monday through Friday only from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. The word regular has been added to the condition to best reflect the operation of a school. We can provide last year's events calendar, which has the times and dates of any after-school, special after-school activities. We are proposing to strike condition 4, which states the intersection of Burnwood Parkway and Chamber of Commerce Drive shall be modified with a raised traffic separator at the intersection of Burnwood Parkway and Chamber of Commerce Drive, permitting only westbound egress, right in, right out. As demonstrated in Exhibit B, the applicant has proposed methods to eliminate traffic circulation from Burnwood Parkway to Chamber of Commerce Drive. Condition 6 negates the need for this condition by proposing to eliminate access on Burnwood via Chamber of Commerce Drive. Additionally, Condition 9 requires compliance with the traffic circulation plan, and Conditions 9 and 10 provide a mechanism to monitor and reevaluate the traffic circulation. Therefore, this condition is not necessary to ensure proper circulation or public safety. Proposed condition 5, the proposed play area shall be enclosed with a 6-foot-tall vinyl fence screened to LDC standards. The applicant is the operator of an existing school site that has closed and was recently sold. As a result, the applicant intends to relocate the existing recreational equipment and fence to this new location. As previously stated, it exceeds the SRF standards. Furthermore, the existing on-site condition within the right-of-ways provide adequate protection without the need for additional public safety enhancements. Burnwood Parkway has an existing swale and mature vegetation between the existing pavement and property boundary, and Chamber of Commerce Drive has an existing non-mountable curb and gutter. Together, these conditions serve as a barrier preventing stray vehicles from entering the subject property and provide the necessary safety conditions for any business located here, including the proposed school. Therefore, an 8-foot wall is not a necessary safety feature. Proposed condition 6, in accordance with the traffic circulation plan provided by the applicant, all school traffic shall enter and exit from the midpoint plaza access point or Timberwild Drive only. The applicant shall provide copies of the plan to all parents and those designated to pick up or drop off students. The applicant shall provide sufficient staff to enforce and ensure the functionality of the plan. I thought reading this that might have been an error because the northern plaza access is Timberwild Drive. So I believe this update accurately reflects the intent of the condition. Am I wrong there? That's fine, okay. Proposed condition 7, all traffic shall be managed entirely within the immediate parking lot of the school use. At no time shall vehicle queues extend onto public roadways, including Chamber of Commerce Drive, or block any access driveway to the parcel. Staff post number 2 shall have a minimum of 3 employees posted at all times for pickup and drop-off to assist in the pickup and drop-off operations. Proposed condition 9, should the operation not function according to the traffic circulation plan attached or additional safety concerns arise from the implementation of the plan after 3 noticed findings of violation, this special exception shall return to the City Council for reconsideration. We have proposed adding notice findings of violation because the applicant desires the ability to be noticed and appropriately respond to claims that the operation is not functioning according to the traffic circulation plan. Additionally, documented observations is an undefined term, and no related process is provided within the city's land development code or code of ordinances. Proposed condition 10, monitoring reports shall be provided annually on the anniversary date of this approval. This shall include enrollment counts for the school and daycare uses and bell schedules, Failure to timely provide this report provides for immediate revocation of the special exception. Requests for additional information shall be responded to within 14 business days. The applicant has no objection to providing the city with information regarding the operation of the school to ensure compliance with the condition. However, a site functionality report is an undefined term, and no related process is provided within the city's land development code or code of ordinances. And finally, we have condition 11, which we are also proposing to strike. Condition 11 states, an internal sidewalk from the requested site for the proposed use to the principal buildings shall be constructed to LDC standards by the first anniversary of this approval. To clarify, we have agreed to the external connection that you see on the left side that connects to Tamiami Trail sidewalk, but this conditions is in reference to the internal connection that you see on the right, which connects to the rest of the retail in the plaza. The stated intent of the US 41 overlay per LDC Section 4888 is to guide redevelopment in a manner that maintains and enhances the visual quality of the corridor and balances the auto-oriented development patterns with the public realm. The applicant is providing the required enhanced buffers and amenity zone as outlined in the LDC. The applicant has agreed to provide a sidewalk connecting the property to US 41 and the proposed amenity zone consistent with Section 4-894 of the LDC. However, the applicant objects to having to interconnect the proposed school to the larger plaza for pedestrian interconnectivity. The requested internal sidewalk cannot be provided in the location required by staff, as the spacing of the existing landscape island is not of an adequate width. Additionally, providing this connection would create a direct path for any member of the public from US 41 to the existing shopping plaza, which would have the effect of providing direct public access to the front of the private school. The applicant requests this condition be deleted to ensure the safety and security of the school site and attending young students.
Questions? Okay, because now we hear from the staff.
Okay, Mary Zizzo, again for the record. This is the request for Discovery Day Academy and a special exception request for the proposed K-5 school for 72 students to coexist with their proposed daycare operation of 40 students. As mentioned previously, within the zoning district, a special exception is required for a non-commercial school that is not owned by Lee County and constructed by Lee County School Board. So within this review, we had Jay Sweet, our planner and surveyor, Tricia Goff, our city engineer, Tom Ross, our traffic engineer, Sean Gibbons with landscape compliance, myself, and Bonita Springs Public Works. As previously mentioned, this is located in the Prado at Spring Creek Shopping Center, south of Old 41 and US 41, across from Pelican Landing. Now that we're all familiar with the location. Just a better picture. To also show the elementary way is to the south, which also has Spring Creek Elementary School. So a special exception request is required for these types of uses due to the impacts to the surrounding neighborhoods as well as safety concerns. Safety concerns, the health, safety, and welfare of students are very important to us, as well as proper access to a road to facilitate the operation. As previously mentioned, this request is for 72 students for the K-5 private school use. The daycare operation is proposed to be for 40 children, and the daycare use is permitted by right within that zoning district. The building has been vacant, and any site improvements would also require a traffic impact statement or some type of analysis. So even though the daycare use is permitted by right, they would still have to go through an analysis to make sure that the site could still function for that use accordingly. And therefore, we combine that analysis with this application, and then they've also submitted for their site permit concurrently, which again cannot be approved until this either gets approved or denied. So the requested location is part of the same property as much of the Prado complex. So it's the same property as the movie theater and Jimmy P's and Sorella's. It functions similar to an out parcel, but is not necessarily classified as one with the way it's set up. And as previously mentioned, they would be leasing the building that is owned by that complex owner, Isram Prado. So the site plan provided by the applicants show that they are looking to add a secured play area for the school and daycare use. And that would be on the eastern side, according to their site plan, approximately 6,100 square feet, which is quite large. But it would corner Chamber of Commerce Drive and Burnwood Parkway. And before we get further into the analysis, I'd like to bring up Tom Ross, our traffic engineer, to talk about our concerns.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Tom Ross. I'm the staff traffic engineer. Just to discuss some of the concerns that were raised earlier and that the applicant also mentioned, as you can see on the slide there, the location of the proposed school is adjacent to the intersection of Chamber of Commerce Drive and Burnwood Parkway, which itself is very close, within 300 feet of US 41, which, as we all know, is a very busy 6-lane highway. The traffic counts that the applicant did showed, and with, noting that things are slow these days, right, as some of you had mentioned, even with that reduction, the traffic volume showed a significant amount of traffic desiring to turn left in the morning during those times at US 41 off of Burnwood Parkway. And so the concern that staff had was, well, what does that do when traffic is coming in the morning to go to Discovery Day and wants to turn left into Chamber of Commerce Drive from Burnwood Parkway, and you have cars stacking that are heading westbound waiting on the light at US 41? Now, a lot of you may not know, but that light is timed for a 3-minute cycle length. So it means you sit there for 3 minutes waiting on traffic, and the cars continue to come up along Burnwood Parkway, and they continue to stack. And the analysis that was documented in the TIS that the applicant provided even documented that and showed that the queue could extend back at times over 400 feet. Well, as I said before, it's only 300 feet over to Chamber of Commerce Drive. So as you can see, a lot of times that traffic will back up and stack and block that entrance there. So that was one of the concerns. Next slide, please. One of the other concerns was, if you look at this table that was provided in the applicant's traffic impact statement, the times for Discovery Day are staggered, as they mentioned, but the arrival times in the morning aren't. They all arrive at the same time. They all come in around 8, they all come in just before 8:30. So they're all coming in at that 8:15 to 8:30 window. Now granted, if you look down at the bottom table, you'll see Spring Creek Elementary. Yes, those times are a little bit offset of that, but only by 5 minutes. Now, a lot of us are parents. I've been a parent. We all bring our kids to school. It does operate efficiently, but we can't always guarantee that it's going to operate like clockwork all the time. And so one of the concerns too was, well, what does that interaction do with Spring Creek Elementary entering at the same time and then leaving, and same thing with Discovery Day School as well. So that was some of the concerns that staff had and raised about that. And so, next slide, please. And so in response, the applicant did offer to have all their traffic go out towards the north, to Timberwild and or the midpoint access point, which staff agrees with. We think that's a good improvement on the operation flow of this. They also proposed installing the cones at Chamber of Commerce Drive, where The access comes off Burnwood Parkway during those times when the school is operating. Staff has concerns about that because of a temporary closure, which is going to be confusing to the public. This is still a public shopping center, and it's going to be difficult for the public to understand and know what's going to happen there. It's going to be difficult to manage compliance with that. And we sent this also to Public Works to review, and they agree with our concerns. In fact, they do not agree with placing the cones out there and temporarily closing that. So we instead propose, which is in the condition, to do a permanent raised island to control access there permanently and only allow westbound traffic from Burnwood to turn right into Chamber of Commerce Drive, and then exiting traffic from the site to turn right and head west on Burnwood Parkway towards US 41. And then also close the left turn lane on eastbound Burnwood Parkway to, again, prohibit that access into Chamber of Commerce Drive from Burnwood Parkway. We believe this is the best way to make sure that there's a consistent operation there that the public will be able to follow and understand, and that you can get full compliance in making sure that the traffic plan is followed. Next slide, please. The other item that we had concerns about, of course, is the queuing, and I think some of you have raised those as well. This plan is, is a plan for worst case conditions. I agree with that. But again, this is the kinds of things that myself as a traffic engineer, we look for. We want to make sure that we don't design everything to the fine tooth on every plan, because we know plans don't always go well, especially when you're dealing with children and you're dealing with parents and you're dealing with pickup and drop off. On top of that, while the double stacked operation, and admittedly it does occur in different, some facilities do utilize that, typically it's usually done in a more straightforward fashion. In other words, a straight line that's controlled and they have room to manage it. It's rarely done in a small, tight parking lot such as this. This parking lot was never designed for a school and for a pickup and drop-off operation. It was designed for a retail center where people come and go sporadically and park in the spaces, come into the site, and then leave. It wasn't designed for a massive operation happening twice a day with lots of children and loading and unloading cars. And you just look at the tight turns. You have two 90-degree turns, and it's not a very wide aisle. Those aisles were not designed for two-way flow constantly in that fashion. They were designed for cars to turn typically one at a time. Now, you can make that, and you can make that turn, but it requires a lot of concentration. And imagine, and I've seen my own observations, and I can't document this, but my own observations are that majority of families picking up and dropping off kids at schools, particularly when they have multiple children, which is what the applicant had stated, that they have families with multiple children, are typically in much larger vehicles, minivans, SUVs. Those vehicles are much longer and require larger turning radius. And so you can't get easily those two vehicles to make that turn. So this requires a very precise and efficient operation. I can't testify to you that they cannot do it. They've showed a plan where they say that they can do it. And I would hope that they can. And so one of the conditions that we applied in there, I believe it was condition 9, requires that if the queues extend out onto Chamber of Commerce Drive and repeated violations of that are observed and documented, that the special exception approval would be reconsidered by the City Council. And I think that's an important point in order to make sure that this works. This whole plan is going to be dependent upon the applicant and their execution. It's all about execution. They've shown a plan, and I've analyzed, and the numbers do check out, but it really relies on full 100% compliance and execution. And if that doesn't happen, that's when you will see the problems occur. And I think that's all I have. Mayor?
Thank you.
Oh, any questions? I'm sorry, any questions?
No, I think you've outlined it perfectly. I think you've addressed many of the concerns.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we proceed, I will mention that the applicant provided additional information today that we have not had time to, analyze, and therefore that was not incorporated into our findings analysis. So all points are analyzed within the staff report based on what we had, but I will summarize a few that were of concern to us or that are worth mentioning. For a special exception to be approved, you could change it. Yes, thank you. There must be existing or changing conditions that make the approval appropriate. And the fact that there is more vacant space because retail sales have changed more to internet sales doesn't necessarily qualify as a changed condition. And therefore, I think they expanded on that today, but again, this was at the time of analysis when they wrote their original narrative. The testimony of the public. At the first neighborhood meeting, it was brought up about concerns of traffic on Burnwood Parkway and existing restaurants and alcohol consumption. That does have validity. For a restaurant to have outdoor consumption, once this school is approved, it will now require a special exception. Further, if a restaurant establishment is vacant for 6 months or more, they will then have to go through the process again to get outdoor consumption. And that would be any outdoor seating. Further, whether the request is consistent with the Bonita plan. We do find this to be appropriate within the general commercial future land use, and they do have adequate facilities, so that was not a concern as far as that goes. The next slide, please. Okay, so some of these combine, so I want to touch on a couple of them. The proposed play area that is requested, the applicant proposes a 6-foot fence around the play area, utilizing their existing one, and I'm sure it's, cost saving. But we do feel that an 8-foot wall shall be required. Yes, the curb was mentioned, but this is proximity to 3 roads. As stated, there is no speed limit sign posted. Even when there is, you can't always depend on that. You have many children inside. It's a very large area. And so you want to keep those children inside and prevent people to be able to enter that as well. And that would be vehicular and pedestrian traffic. Another thing worth mentioning here is the US 41 overlay district. This property is located within that overlay, and that has very specific requirements. For starters, the pedestrian connection from US 41 into the site. And so the applicants are willing to do that. And now you have pedestrians in the site with a dead-end sidewalk. Therefore, the US 41 overlay district requires a pedestrian connection from the site to all principal buildings. And so it wasn't necessarily a request, but a code requirement that they have that sidewalk connect to the principal buildings. In this case, it wouldn't be where the old Buffalo Wild Wings was. They'd have to have it continue there because it doesn't start until the following building by Sorella's. And then the permanent raised curb improvement was already discussed by Mr. Ross, and essentially that would prevent the temporary closures, which again, Public Works has not agreed to, and it would prevent the unsafe measure of temporary closing a road when people don't expect that from the public. We've already touched on the proposed stacking and queuing plan for this site. One thing worth mentioning is that if the queuing does fill up, then they are proposing that those cars then park in those highlighted spaces. That does provide safety concerns, as now you have additional people parking and crossing the road in order to do so. Further, they do have a daycare operation, and those patrons are required to park as well. So you have additional people parking while still having a stacking operation continuing. So the two uses need to coexist appropriately, and I think they need to do a better job of explaining how that would happen during those specific times. It has been mentioned that not many people are trying to pick up their kids during those times if they're in the daycare operation, but if you have multiple children, the staggered pickup times or the parking, it all contributes to more time that may extend that queue. And then the zoning. The zoning does not expressly allow a school within the community commercial district. It's intended for heavy commercial uses, retail. You're in a huge retail plaza, restaurants. We do have zonings that are more appropriate for schools, and we think that would be, that a CS1 or a CS2 zoning would be more appropriate to provide the adequate buffering between the intensities. And then as previously mentioned, new restaurants and then previously vacant restaurants will be required to go through that special exception process for an outdoor consumption on premises, which will dynamically change the area, which is intended to be commercial and have those restaurants. So our recommendations, as previously discussed, we recommended consideration because we don't feel that this is the most appropriate site, but we do believe that the operation can successfully be achieved solely provided that these conditions are approved and required. We've already gone through many of them, so it's for this specific location only, this building. They can't open another daycare at in another unit within that building, another school within that building, or in the movie theater building. And then it's only for 40 daycare students and 72 elementary students. And it's specifically written that way so that we can, if they decide to do more of one or the other, then we will have to assess that again for impacts. The hours of operation, we did say Monday through Friday from 7 to 6. If there are after-school activities that need to be considered, then I think staff would need more time to look at what those are. But similar to our previous use, occasionally they'll have back-to-school night or events like that. And so we would be amenable to special events at other times. And then the intersection, we've previously spoken about how we do believe that that permanent improvement is required for that plaza. And while they are operating solely out of that one building, if you recall that this is one property, the many buildings within that one property. And so they do have the ability to add improvements and obligations to add improvements to that site. We've previously spoken about the 8-foot wall that we believe should be installed to protect the children within. And then this number 6, they did bring up a good point. When I was saying the Northern Plaza access point, I meant the entrance right above, so we can change that language to midpoint to make it more clear that they can use the midpoint access point or Timberwell Drive, but solely those two are supposed to be used for the ingress and egress for their patrons. Now, number 7, all traffic shall be managed entirely within the immediate parking lot. Again, there should be no overflow onto Chamber of Commerce Drive. Number 8, staff post 2, which would be right at the entrance of the building, shall have a minimum of 3 employees. And that's to make sure if they do have 2 cars, a 2-car queue, then they have adequate people to be bringing out new children and returning inside. Number 9, should the operation not function according to the plan attached or additional safety concerns arise from the implementation of it, after 3 documented observations, then the special exception shall return to City Council for a reconsideration. I don't believe saying noticed findings of violation would be appropriate if there is a major safety concern that arises that wasn't necessarily addressed within the plan. However, we are amenable to working out that language to make sure the same intent is achieved. Number 10, how monitoring reports shall be provided annually to include the site functionality report, enrollment counts for both uses, and bell schedules. We do believe a site functionality report is and shall be required That's to ensure that the pickup and drop-off operation is functioning as planned. And that doesn't necessarily need to be a full-lengthy report, but we can create some parameters to make that more clear, similar to our previous case, where we will come up with a form to do so. And then number 11, an internal sidewalk from the requested site for the proposed use to the principal buildings shall be constructed. And this is a US 41 requirement. So if they are not willing to comply with the code, then again, that would contribute to our findings. But we were giving them time here to do so within a year, because we don't feel that this is necessarily something that needs to be achieved for the safety of the school operation. But because it is a code requirement, because they are within a commercial plaza and acting as though they are a commercial use, then they should be contributing to the commercial requirements. And therefore, we gave them 1 year from the date if approved. Questions?
Are you through, Mary?
Yes.
Did I hear you basically say that the applicant has not met the change necessary to grant this exemption?
So we did the analysis based on the
That's what
findings,
you
and
said.
yes, we do have concerns in that they don't necessarily satisfy all of them.
Questions?
I don't. I don't know if the chair is
All
ready
right.
for a motion or.
Well, no, I think we have to hear from the public. Any public comments?
Can I make three quick?
Oh, sorry.
No, just three real quick things. One, yes, public comment to the applicant, have an opportunity to rebut anything from staff. And then three, which they can wait till after public comment, if there is any.
Three is?
And then the third point is, I just want to clarify, I believe, and I want to clarify with Mrs. Ill, the 2 points of contention is staff is recommending approval with the conditions laid out, because they believe that those address their concerns. The 2 conditions appear to be the sidewalk and the right-in, right-out on Burnwood. Is there a third, is there more?
Wait,
The wall.
Derek,
I just want to make sure that, so that. when
the
you're-
staff is recommending consideration, not approval.
Yes, but
Okay.
I believe
I
that
want
they.
to clarify that, because that, I think, is very, very important.
Okay.
I agree.
Well, in the end, I think that the conditions are intended to mitigate their concerns regarding the approval.
The applicant has an opportunity now, if they wish to rebut.
Any public comment? Just get it out of the way.
Oh, no public comment, I asked that, apparently, no. All right.
Good morning. For the record, again, Tina Ekblad with Morse Pugh Associates. I do have a few comments, and then Ms. Basart would like to follow up after me. Attorney Rooney is correct. We do have 3 points of contention. The first being the permanent closure of the turning movement on Burnwood. The second being the sidewalk. On both of those fronts, you heard from staff the testimony that the concern is the use of the greater plaza and the patrons of that plaza and the members of the public using that plaza, not the school site, not the impact of the traffic and the students of the school site. You heard them explain that our traffic analysis, as revised, addressed the issue with Burnwood Parkway. So understand that the case before you today for special exception is a private school and the traffic and the use associated with that school, not the impact of the remaining plaza. And so if you want those things to occur, then there needs to be a rational nexus between the impact of the school. Understand that you are proposing that a private school owner shut a public right-of-way and a turning movement that relates to the rest of the plaza and those patrons. And you've already heard from your other zoning board members that they use that plaza, they make that movement. I understand the concern, but it is not related to the analysis provided by the applicant regarding the traffic. Same thing with the pedestrian access. We understand the US 41 overlay. We understand the retail use of the plaza. This is the redevelopment of an existing retail use into a private school where the safety and concern of elementary school students needs to be elevated. On that front, an 8-foot wall has not had any substantial and competent evidence provided for it. You heard testimony from our engineer regarding the right-of-way improvements that are there to address wayward vehicles. That existing 6-foot vinyl fence is already used on an existing site to provide safety and security for the students. And while it may seem large, the square footage for that recreational area is related back to those school standards that Ms. Leal mentioned in state code and state reference. And so we do not have to meet those requirements, and yet we are, and we are exceeding them. And there is no reason to burden the applicant by putting in an 8-foot wall when she already has an existing 6-foot fence that exceeds the requirements. So those are my closing statements regarding the 3 points of contention. Hang on one second.
Go ahead. Sorry.
And why I believe that you can make a finding that we have met the intent. Again, staff does not see vacancy as a changing condition, but you do have market changing conditions in this plaza. There is a very high vacancy rate. You also have a high density of students in this area and a demonstrated need. That is a changing condition. I do want to turn it over to Ms. Basehart to discuss the operation and the queuing, since that is so important.
May I clarify one point, please? Are you saying that you disagree with the recommendation of the staff to build an 8-foot wall?
I am requesting that you change it to a 6-foot vinyl fence.
So you do disagree with the 8-foot wall
I do.
recommendation? Thank you.
In closing, I just think it's noteworthy to mention, and something I did not include before in regards to operations, we also offer an after-school care program from 3:30 to 5:30 that's heavily attended. So our car line, while it is utilized by some families, it is the small minority of families. Most families that have pre-K children as well as primary, those children also attend after school, so those parents may show up between 4:30 and 5:30, park their vehicles, and come inside. So I just thought it was noteworthy to mention that not all elementary school students can be perceived to be part of the car line, because in fact, many of them stay for after-school services. So our school car line, I would invite any of you to come and see how it operates, and you'll say, oh my goodness, it runs efficiently, it's very small. I mean, I might have 20 cars, if that. So I just, in addition to all the science and engineering and reports, want to bring some level of logic in how this actually functions, because this decision will have a massive impact on many families, many teachers, and also me personally, who's invested $1 million in the renovation of this facility in order to get ready for the school year and continue on for my families as well as my staff. Thank you.
Can I ask you, have you invested that money already, or are you going to?
Yes, sir, I already have.
All right, okay.
I took the risk because of timing.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
May I make one?
Don't go away.
I want to make one comment. I think, with all due respect, madam, you're missing the main issue. And in my opinion, is this an appropriate location for an elementary school? And I must tell you my opinion right now, it is not. Sorry. Please proceed.
Can I?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a concern, and many times when faced with an issue like this, I don't quite think anybody in this room would have any question about the mission, the noble mission of, Discovery Day and similar type schools, and what they do for society overall and making people good adults ultimately. And then I'm faced with this, what is the greater good? And I'm really conflicted, because I heard solutions relative to the traffic flow. Cones were mentioned, which I think is DOA in my opinion. I don't think that would work. Or a berm even, because people are, fortunately or unfortunately, victims of habit. I frequent that probably at least once or twice a week, and it's not very much, but still very familiar with how people ingress and egress from that particular location. And so I'm really perhaps overly concerned, but again, as an academic myself, the safety and welfare, health, safety, and welfare override everything else in my mind at this particular point. And with that statement, I'm really torn. The mission of the school is noble. I don't doubt that for 1 second, and I really mean that. However, I'm really torn, and I have to go to the issue of safety, health, and welfare. And I really torn, but I don't think I could support this request for a special exception. So I'm sorry about that, but that's how I feel.
Mr. Chairman, Gambrell here. Is there a representative of the building owner anywhere?
Apparently not.
So, Ms. Basehart?
Yes, sir.
Basehart, noble cause. That you're a small business owner and doing it, I applaud you, I commend you. It's beyond comprehension what you do, getting out of bed every day and doing this for the children. You've already leased the space?
Yes, sir.
You're already conducting renovations within the space?
Yes, sir.
I drove for Debbie disclosure, and I'll send you the piece of paper. I was by there last night at 8 p.m., and there was work going on in the building. It's been gutted. You've spent the money to renovate this building you don't own?
Yes, sir. I have nowhere else to go.
My question is why?
Yeah.
To continue the operations of our school program. And due to COVID, we sold the building that we are in, which was approximately $60,000 a month to maintain. We were successful in our sale. Thankfully, the gentleman we sold it to is going to allow us to occupy it until we get through what was this process as well as the renovation. However, that time is limited. And I have an existing school body and an existing staff that I will be relocating. I really wish school were in session, and I wish we had the opportunity, to actually observe this. Because
I must have missed it, madam, but why did you sell the building?
COVID. It's about $60,000 a month to operate where I'm currently at.
So you had no students?
We have students.
Coming into
It was overkill. It's a 23,000 square foot space. As I said, we're a micro school. So we have a limited number of students. We've always kind of averaged at that amount. And from the standpoint of operations, it made more sense for our school to be able to have more resources for programming and teacher salaries and healthcare and things of that nature than to invest that all into a facility at $60,000 a month. It's the prudent thing to do. I have an MBA as well, so I kind of think with that hat, as well as an academician.
So you took a risk to lease or purchase a place without the necessary approvals, not knowing whether or not they would be approved.
I don't think I had an option at that point.
And this is the best building you could find? I mean,
Yes, sir.
In the same plaza, Steinmart's empty, which would have better, to me,
There's
better
no
traffic queuing.
contiguous play space was the biggest issue. And also having a standalone building as well was very important. And I think what was very attractive about this space is the parking lot is very private. And it's double the parking that I have now and proper queuing. So it provided that certain level of safety, separateness, that is very much expected of my clientele and for my school, community.
So teach this MBA. Why is a standalone building important?
I think the privacy factor, being a school, having that private parking lot, having that separated, for example, our front door from possibly a retail shop that could go in next door. It's just a privacy factor.
Well, I think you have a dilemma. Any other questions, comments? Please, sure, go ahead.
First of all, I very much would like to vote to approve this.
Thank you.
I appreciate what you're doing and your dilemma. But I also think that there are changing market conditions that are occurring due to this pandemic. and it affects the owner of this property, not the lease that you sign. And I think the owner of this property has some responsibilities to manage their property in such a way that it addresses changing market conditions. If retail is going to go out of business because everybody buys stuff on the internet now, then the owner should be aware of that. I'm sure they are. And I think they're going to have to come up with new plans to deal with their empty space. And so they have some sort of liability and responsibility to make possibly some improvements to make people who want to lease their property, like yourself, to comply with the regulations. I mean, things are changing, and we don't know how they're going to change, but if the people that own these properties are the ones that have the primary responsibility, in my opinion. And the recommendations that staff has made, I think, are spot on. I think they have addressed a lot of the concerns. I think they've done a great job in coming up with recommendations that are reasonable, that a prudent owner should consider, not necessarily the people that are leasing the properties. With respect to the median that's been recommended, I think that's a necessity. I think the traffic has to be controlled at that location. I don't think cones can do it. The sidewalk, I mean, if you're going to put the sidewalk in on the west side, all you've done is create a dead-end sidewalk with people piling up. They're going to go somewhere. You might as well finish the sidewalk, and that's a property improvement that the owner should be making to make his mall or his property more attractive and compliant. I think that the only questionable thing is the fence, and quite frankly, I think if staff recommends an 8-foot fence, I agree with an 8-foot fence. And if we get all of the conditions as recommended by staff, I will vote for it.
Mr. Chairman, may I just briefly?
Please, Mr. Rooney.
I had a request from the applicant's consultant to take a brief recess to confer with their client and discuss the
Certainly.
conditions. Maybe 5 minutes?
Sure.
Sure. Thank you very much. Okay, we're back in session.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to ask John Dolmer to come up, but I believe we have an agreement in principle on the conditions, at least the 3 conditions that have been an issue, that are an issue, to the extent that that's affecting your consideration of the application.
Well, the only issue seems to be whether it's an 8-foot concrete fence or a chain link. That's the
And I
issue.
think the difference between our opinion, and I don't want to cut too far ahead, has been an issue of safety and not one of aesthetics. And I think that during our discussion, I think we've realized that we both have the same concern, that we want to protect those children from vehicles that are rather close to that playground. And so what we will do is we'll be looking for solutions that provide that level of safety at maybe a lower cost than a wall between today and the city council meeting.
Okay.
We'd also want to take advantage of that time to discuss the traffic flow and how we will be addressing the intersection of Chamber Commerce Drive and Burnwood Drive. Also, the third issue that was an issue of contention was the location of the sidewalk. And while we are not looking to waive that condition, we are looking to evaluate alternatives of where that sidewalk can be constructed that would connect through the site into the plaza itself. So those 3 issues, in principle, we have come to an agreement with the applicant. We do not have the specifics, obviously, as this understanding just took place about 30 seconds ago. But whatever this board finds as a recommendation, we would ask that you also acknowledge that those 3 areas of contention are areas that we're going to be looking for solutions prior to the council meeting.
So you're asking for conditional approval subject to your agreeing with the applicant on these changes?
Essentially,
In effect.
yes. What it would be a recommendation that if these issues are satisfied to both parties, it could be considered consistent with the standards of the Land Development Code and the Comprehensive Plan. If they are not agreed to, then that recommendation obviously would not exist, and it would be a recommendation that they are inconsistent with those standards. of the Land
In the
Development Code.
interim, the construction, everything is going to proceed. And it's going to make it a little more difficult, is it not?
They're separate, just so this board understands. There is no zoning requirement for a building permit to be issued. This applicant, as the leasee
I'm
of
not
this
talking-
property.
Excuse me, I'm
Yes,
not
sir.
talking about a permit. I'm saying if you cannot agree on the conditions, Then what happens?
But the applicant is operating with respect to the renovations of the facility at risk. My understanding is they're going to continue to do that. What we are seeking is to come up with alternative we're looking for a recommendation from the zoning board to the city council, and in the week and a half before that application has to be finalized for the city council, we'll resolve those 3 conditions, which in their current form are unacceptable to the applicant. But I'll give you the preview of the one that I think we have the most agreement on, which is the traffic at Burnwood. So the issue is a consideration of approvals and costs for the traffic island. The alternative to that would be a sheriff's deputy, similar to when we talked about the churches on Indian Beach Road. That would be an acceptable alternative to the city, because then you have someone who's doing maintenance of traffic, who's authorized and can adjust circumstances. But that may not be a permanent solution. So a condition that is an either or may be something that's more appropriate, and we just need to work that out by the time we get to city council.
Mr. Hirsch?
Yeah, I have a question, Derek, on the timing. I understand what you just said, but the next city council meeting, is this going to be ready for the next council meeting, which would be next week?
No.
Okay. Then could I suggest, and I think the recommendation is going, could I suggest, and I don't know if my colleagues would agree, but I'm willing to participate in another short, focused zoning board meeting between now and the time it'll come up to city council, just so, because a lot could happen. Even though those recommendations are excellent, there still may be some give and take. And I'm just simply, for myself, I'd be more comfortable if the zoning board could also know what the city has finally agreed upon with the applicant, and then we could have another zoning board meeting strictly with this one agenda item, a short meeting. I think that would, again, I don't know if my colleagues would agree.
My recommendation on that would be, because the applicant is working towards a timing goal, and even the second meeting in July for the city council may be a very aggressive goal for us, and the fact that we would have to also notice and advertise, locate space, and do everything to get the zoning board, that it may be very difficult to accomplish that. What I would recommend to make sure that the city council has the full intent of the zoning board with respect to the conditions is, I would ask that maybe in voting on your recommendation, you have the right with each vote to make personal comments. And so making it clear from the record here in your votes, we can translate that in the staff report moving forward, so that the city council understands not just a broad recommendation with 3 outlying things that you want to dive in deeper on.
That's acceptable for me. Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, let me make one point on that. I mean, it's wonderful that everyone talks about walls and parking and traffic diverters and everything, but in my opinion, they're missing the main point, which in my opinion is this is an inappropriate location for a school. And I'm sorry, and no matter what the conditions you come up with, you're not going to change my opinion. But I'm one man. So, please. Now, it's up to my colleagues. Are we ready for a vote?
Ask for a roll call vote, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I guess the roll will be called whether to recommend this application
Recommend
to the city council.
Yeah, as a special exception.
Right.
Recommend
As a special exemption, okay.
Approval with, I would assume that the recommendation of the motion is recommend approval with the stipulation that the 3 outstanding conditions
Will be
resolved.
okay. Okay.
And then I would ask again, as Mr. Gambrell pointed out, do a roll call and have
Fine.
each member, including yourself, Mr. Chairman,
Right.
state your objections or rationale for your vote, so that we can transmit that to the city council.
Okay. Shall we proceed? Deborah?
Do we have a second?
I'm sorry? Oh, a second to that motion. Yeah, I'll second the motion. I think it's okay.
Did you, who made the motion?
Mr. Gambrell
So
made the
moved.
motion to call a
Gambrell
roll.
made the motion for a roll call
Oh,
vote.
so the motion is for a roll call. Okay, let's proceed.
Bruce Galloway.
I have to go first, huh? keeping in mind that this is probably the first of many situations exactly like this that we're going to face as a zoning board. Malls, shopping centers are closing down and reshuffling all over the United States, and we're feeling our way through trying to find new uses for these things. And this is probably a perfect example of the problems that come up when we try and do this. I agree in many ways that this is probably not an appropriate site for a school, particularly for a college, maybe, a school for kids, probably not. However, with the three issues that have to be ironed out, I think if those three can be ironed out, I think it can be made an appropriate location for the school. Again, it's not perfect, but we're dealing with a very imperfect shopping mall that has to transition to something else. So I guess my vote would be yes to approve, subject to the approval of an arrangement between the staff and the applicant on the solution to the issue of the fence, the traffic on Burnwood, and the sidewalk. And I happen to think that the sidewalk is extremely important to the solution of this problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gary Gamble.
Elizabeth, I'm literally in tears. And I'm going to go back to what I said much earlier. Your life is at stake. Your money is at stake. These children are at stake. And for this board to only be given 3 business days to consider the complexities of this and the impact of this is grossly inadequate. We need to fix this going forward. My vote is I abstain.
Just for the record, Mr. Gambrell, I was going to address this after the meeting. There is a requirement under Florida law that you have to vote either in the affirmative or denial unless there's a conflict of interest. So if you feel there's a conflict of interest, you can abstain. If not, we can treat the abstention as a denial. I don't want to, I'm only putting that because I don't believe you actually wish to desire to deny the application.
Then I'm in conflict with the law. I mean,
Okay.
Russ Swin.
I say
Well,
yes.
excuse me, what was that vote?
I abstain.
But you can't.
Mr. Rooney is telling me I can't.
Right,
And that-
so,
then it-
So
for-
here you go.
For purposes of the
Cut me
motion,
up.
it's treated as a denial.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the reference. Are you in favor or opposed?
I'm not voting.
It'll be treated as a denial, so it'll be one.
Well, then put it down as recusing himself for whatever reason. That reason. Next.
I say yes. I think the staff has given you an opportunity for an opening to help take care of some of these arrangements and everything. And I understand being in the preschool business for a decade plus, I know the ups and downs of that. But at the same time, I appreciate where you're at. And I appreciate what the zoning committee has done in the laws and different things. So I think the staff is trying to work with you, and I'm going to go with the recommendation of the staff as long as you meet that approvals. So good luck to you.
Chairman Rassio.
I'm sorry. Again, I'm not concerned with the ancillary issues of parking and walls and traffic diverters. My opinion, it is not an appropriate location for an elementary school, so I would vote no.
Ben Hershenson.
I guess maybe as a researcher, I can't predict results until I actually see them in front of me. So I'm going to say this, and I hope everybody understands, at this particular point in time, because I don't know what's going to be worked out between staff, I have my hopes. So if I'm planning, I will vote no today. However, I will also say I'm anxiously awaiting for the city council meeting and the details. I'm sorry to have to do that.
Gerald Benson.
Yes, I think that if staff and the applicant can work out the conditions to the three outstanding issues that are unresolved, to the satisfaction of City Council, that I would vote yes on this. I do think the median or a traffic cop or some other active control device other than cones is required in that location. And the sidewalk is, I think, something on a broader scale. It has to be addressed one way or another, probably by the landlord.
Linda Waterhouse.
I am saying yes. I do, with the condition that things are worked out with the staff, and then I'm yes.
It passes 4-3.
Okay, good. Well, there we are. So I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone for their participation and for a very, very entertaining meeting and a good debate. Thank you very much. The meeting is now adjourned.